Chapter 1001. As far as he knew, the strongest force in history was the Mongol cavalry led by Genghis Khan. Not only did they occupy most of the areas around the Central Plains, they even went as far as Eastern Europe, which was the present-day Austria, Hungary, Vienna, and the vicinity of the Danube. That was already so shocking that even now many places were still ruled by their descendants and remnant forces. But now Yang Qindong's reason seemed to be even more far-sighted. He actually wanted to attack across the sea. Wasn't this the rhythm of conquering the entire world? Zhou Xian did not know that the bugnam of Gojosian in his eyes was from the future. He had seen too many scenes of Han people being discriminated against and seen too much injustice. He had even seen countless provocations, but what he could do back then was limited. Now that he finally had the chance to change everything, no matter how hard he worked, it was all worth it. He wanted to see the moment when the Han people stood at the peak of the world. He wanted the blood of the Han people to always be the noblest and purest. He wanted to see that no matter where the Han people represented the most powerful and inviolable, there was no blasphemy. For this dream he was willing to give up everything, including his life. Yang Qindong's showdown made Zhou Xian admire him, and at the same time he also gained more confidence. Bugnam of Gojosian, don't worry. This old subject knows what to do. In the future I will accept as many Han people as there are. If there is any pressure, this old subject will bear it. If I can't bear it, I will ask for help from Bugnam of Gojosian. Good. If there is someone who goes overboard, City Lord, you can do whatever you want. Even if the sky falls, this prince will hold it up for you. Yang Qindong smiled. With Zhou Xian's support, the number of Han people in his hands would definitely increase. This would play a very positive role in his future plans. After leaving the City Lord's manor, Yang Qindong set up a few important factories under the protection of Long Wei. The reason why Xianxia could develop so smoothly was because of these factories. Furthermore, because they produced countless products that surpassed this era, it allowed the five-star army to have more money. With a sufficient financial foundation, they could do more things that they wanted to do. Every time he returned to Crimson City, as long as he had time, Yang Qindong would visit these factories to encourage everyone and also to help them solve some problems. He might not understand all the professional things, but after all, he had the experience of the later generations. He was the clearest about which path he should take and which direction he should choose. After Zhou Xian and Yang Qindong finished their discussion, he waved his brush and took out 1,000,000 taels of silver from the treasury to invest in the Langshan shelter at the border of southern Ming and southern Ming. It must be said that in these past few years, there were many different types of products in Crimson City, and they were all extremely novel. The moment they left the island, they would become popular goods and brought about great profits. It was also because of this that he was quite satisfied with his position as City Lord. At the very least, he did not need to worry about money and was incomparably bold when doing things. After receiving the silver, Zhou Xian felt that he had not done enough. Thus, he got someone to arrange for him to go to the Han people's preparation camp to take a look. He wanted to understand the situation there and solve the practical problems while also encouraging the Han people. Following Yang Qindong's words, these people would be scattered all over the world as seeds in the future. Now that they were fortunate enough to stay in Crimson City, he wanted to give them warmth and let them feel his care and concern. The Han people preparation camp referred to the Han people who came from other places temporarily. No matter what their living conditions were like before, they were treated equally here. At the same time, they had to learn all kinds of skills. For example, the men could learn farming, blacksmithing, fishing, or work in factories. The women could learn weaving, embroidery, or work in factories, and so on. In short, the first person had to learn at least 1 or 2 skills to prepare for a better life outside. Other than that, learning culture was also essential. If anyone performed exceptionally well, they might be able to stay in Crimson City forever. In the end, it was up to everyone to decide. In short, this was a preparation camp. People came from all over, and after recharging, they were arranged to go in all directions. Because people came and went frequently, the Han people preparation camp was not only under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Civil Affairs. At the same time, the Ministry of Public Security also had people stationed here 24 hours a day to prevent unpleasant things from happening. At the same time, it was also to supervise everyone and act as a deterrent. When Zhou Xian arrived at the preparation camp, he saw many public security personnel patrolling nearby. As it was close to evening, many people who went out to work had returned, making the place very lively. Although it was called a preparation camp, it was not a simple tent. Instead, it was a proper 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom house built with red bricks and gray tiles. The only difference was that the owner of the place changed frequently. Zhou Xian came in plain clothes, which was his usual style. He did not like to be ostentatious wherever he went. Most of the time he came quietly and left quietly. Some problems were quickly solved. This time was the same. When Zhou Xian came, he only brought an assistant and 2 guards arranged by Yang Chendong. They were all from Lingfeng. Arriving early was better than arriving at the right time. When Zhou Xian arrived, everyone had finished their work and was having dinner. He took the citizen's identification card from the governor's mansion and arrived at the place without attracting any attention. He saw a family of 5 squatting outside the door and eating dinner. This was a very ordinary family of 5. The parents brought 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. Among them, the eldest son was already over 15 years old. He was in the middle of puberty, which was also the time when the people said that the half-grown boy was eating his father dry. When Zhou Xian walked to the door of the courtyard, he saw the 15-year-old boy eating all the rice in his bowl. He then turned to the older woman and said, "Mom, I'm still hungry. I still want to eat. Hey, I can't finish it. Here, take it." As a mother, she would always dote on her son. The middle-aged woman with a benevolent expression placed her leftover bowl of rice in front of her son, causing the young man to chuckle foolishly. This scene represented the harmony and happiness of a family. It was unknown how many people would feel after seeing it, but in Zhou Qian's eyes he frowned slightly. His intuition told him that there was something more to it. He noticed his father shaking his head gently. It was not an expression that a strange woman would have when she loved her son, but there was a kind of love and helplessness in it. He quietly made a hand gesture. The 2 guards, including his assistants, stayed outside. He walked into the courtyard with a smile on his face. Then he took out a box of Daoist cigarettes from his pocket and walked toward the middle-aged man who had just put down his bowl and chopsticks. The sudden arrival of a stranger in the courtyard naturally attracted the attention of the family of 5. When they saw that the newcomer was in his 50s and had an amiable expression on his face, the head of the family immediately stood up and rubbed his hands on his pants with a silly smile on his face. Then he carefully reached out his hand to receive the cigarette. He placed it next to his nose and took a light sniff before saying, "Brother, this is the cigarette that people talk about, right? You know about this?" Zhou Qian asked with a smile on his face. "Yes, I know. When I was learning in the factory, I saw someone smoke it. I've only been here for a short time, so I haven't tried it yet." The middle-aged man replied with a sincere smile. "That's right, then try it." Zhou Qian still had a smile on his face. He took out a box of Yang family's matches from Crimson City and lit the cigarette for the middle-aged man. Perhaps because it was his first time smoking, the middle-aged man inhaled a little too quickly and choked. Then he revealed an embarrassed smile. With the cigarette as a bridge of communication, the middle-aged man, who was not good with words, told Zhou Qian what he wanted to know. The middle-aged man was called Qingzhu. He was from Guangdong. When the war between the southern Ming and King Nanming broke out, due to the increase in land rent, he, who was already living a hard life, heard about the Liangshan shelter from his neighbors. Thinking of the old saying, "If you move, you live. If you move, you die." Thus he and his family fled thousands of li from Guangdong to Liangshan. Then they either hurried on foot, sat in a carriage, or took a boat to the Han People preparation camp in Crimson City. After talking about the Liangshan shelter, Qingzhu was filled with emotions. In his words, he had eaten all the food that he had not eaten his entire life. He, who had not been respected his entire life, finally understood the word dignity. He even praised how well he had been taken care of along the way. It was the kind of treatment that he had never experienced before. Even when he was young, his parents had taken care of him like this. When Zhou Qian heard this, he nodded in satisfaction from time to time. Occasionally he would add a few words. When he saw that the other party seemed to have finished speaking, he chuckled and said, "Brother Qing, it seems like you're very satisfied with your current life?" "Satisfied, very satisfied." Qingzhu chuckled and nodded, but his wife suddenly nudged him with her elbow. He immediately rolled his eyes as if warning her about something. This little trick naturally did not escape Zhou Qian's eyes. He immediately smiled. "What's wrong? Could it be that Brother Qing is still hiding something from me?" After he finished speaking, he handed over the pack of Daoist cigarettes in his hand. Zhu's eyes narrowed into slits as he took the pack of cigarettes from Zhou Xian. He felt that Zhou Xian seemed to respect him a lot. After thinking about it, he also felt that it would be wrong of him to hide something from Zhou Xian. He immediately said, "Actually, everything is fine. The only problem is that the food given is not enough. I'm afraid that old brother saw it just now. My eldest son is a little hungry, hee." Chapter 1002. After saying this, Zhu seemed to feel that he had said too much, so he scratched his head in embarrassment. When Zhou Xian heard this, he still had a smile on his face, but he had become a lot more pragmatic. "This shouldn't be. I heard that the matriculation camp's requirement is to provide enough food. How can there be a lack of food?" "Heard?" Zhu looked confused. "It's not that I heard, but it's the rule. To be honest, Brother Qing, I'm actually an investigator. I'm here to see if there's anything you're not satisfied with. I'm here to solve your problems. Just like the lack of food will solve it." Zhou Xian knew that he had to give him some solid information, so he spoke as if he was an officer. "That's what I said. Brother, your bearing is different from us commoners." Zhu had an as expected expression. Since he knew the other party's identity, he did not hide it anymore and told him about the lack of food given by the higher-ups. In the end, he added, "Brother, you saw it just now. My son is growing and has a huge appetite. My wife had no choice but to save some food for them. Then again, being able to eat 7 full meals is already very satisfying. This is something I didn't even dare to think about before." When Zhu said that he was satisfied, he really did not mean to blame him. In the past, he could not even eat 7 full meals. However, the same words had a completely different meaning in Zhou Qian's ears. Yang Qindong had just told him that he wanted the Han people to be rich and to be superior. This was also the reason why he kept conquering new territories and snatching more resources. But now they could not even fill their stomachs. How could they talk about wealth, dignity, and being superior? Zhou Qian left. When he left, Zhu was still thanking him for the half-pack of cigarettes. Other than the loveliness of the commoners, they did not have high expectations. When someone did them a favor, even if it was just a drop of water, they would still thank them for a long time. After leaving the Han matriculation camp, Zhou Qian's expression became completely serious. He looked at his assistant and said, "Send someone to check what's going on with the food problem. Remember, it has to be done in secret. Don't let anyone find out." Zhou Qian's worries were not unfounded. Although Zhu's eldest son could eat a lot, which led to the lack of food, he did not think that this was a special case. If it was really as Yang Qindong said and there was enough food, how could such a problem occur? Only 5 days later, the assistant had investigated the matter thoroughly. The city lord's mansion had elite manpower and many information channels. When they had any requests, the Security Bureau and the CIA could mobilize some of them. The city lord's assistant personally came forward and investigated the matter in just 5 days. Then the report was placed on Zhou Qian's desk. When he finished reading it carefully, he immediately slammed the table and cursed. According to the report, the Han preparatory camp did indeed have a problem of illegally withholding food. However, because the amount was not much, only 20% was deducted per person. In addition, the Han people who had just arrived were more honest. Even if some of them did not have enough to eat, they would not tell others. This problem had never been exposed and no one questioned it. The report also said that the person in charge of this matter was the Vice Minister of Civil Affairs, Xianxia, and the Vice Minister of Public Security, Wanan. They had planted a lot of spies in the camp. Once they found out that someone had come to investigate, they would immediately come up with a plan to deal with it. With their men around, it was difficult for the people to even have a chance to speak. This time, if Zhou Qian had not used an ordinary person's ID of the preparatory camp and not the special pass issued by the city lord's mansion, he would have attracted the attention of others as soon as he appeared. Then they would not have been able to find out anything. How long ago was that? Zhou Qian sat on the chair, panting heavily. He looked like he was very angry. "My lord, it has only been 2 months. The assistant was afraid of being implicated, so he carefully replied. Hearing that it had only been 2 months, Zhou Qian breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, this proved that the Han people who had left the matriculation camp before had not been exploited like this. Otherwise, once those people had left and been assigned to different areas, it would have been difficult to make up for it. However, even if it had only been 2 months, Zhou Qian could not tolerate the existence of this matter. Although it involved the two vice ministers, he still had no intention of backing down or lifting a finger. Since Yang Qindong trusted him so much and gave him the authority of Resin City, he must take his salary and do a good job. Otherwise he would feel sorry for himself. How about this? Send this document to Bugnam of Gojoseon in the palace. At the same time, report to Bugnam of Gojoseon that I'm going to deal with the two vice ministers. Reporting to Bugnam of Gojoseon instead of reporting to Yu Qian for approval meant that Yu Qian had made a decision to deal with the two senior cadres properly instead of just reporting the conflict to Bugnam of Gojoseon. Yu Qian was holding back his anger and wanted to properly deal with these two vice chiefs. Although these two were promoted to their current positions and he had also raised his hand to agree, this did not prevent him from punishing these people for their crimes. Since there was a problem, he had to deal with it. Only in this way could he clean up the mess. Otherwise, if a cadre made a mistake, he would not be able to intimidate others. He had already decided to denounce the cadre and was even prepared to remove him from his post and investigate him. However, what Yu Qian did not expect was that just 3 days later, there was a sudden movement in the palace. A large number of Longwei were sent out. They bypassed the Ministry of Supervision, the Ministry of Anti-Corruption, and even arrested Vice Minister Yan Xiu of the Ministry of Civil Affairs and Vice Minister Wanan of the Ministry of Public Security. Not only that, the head of the Ministry of Civil Affairs, Minister Zhou Hua, was also taken away from his office that afternoon. It was said that Minister Zhou was being wronged when he was taken away. When Yu Qian sent people to investigate, they did not find any problems with Zhou Hua. Yu Qian was very satisfied with this person who was recommended by him. However, he did not understand why this person was implicated. Could it be the responsibility of a leader? But if that was the case, why was Minister Long Tainan of the Ministry of Public Security not arrested? Within a day, a minister and 2 vice ministers were taken away from their offices. It was even done by Longwei. This inevitably caused a lot of discussion among the subordinates. Many of the leaders were anxious and felt that they were in danger. Fortunately, Yang Qindong's actions were always clean and efficient. On the second day of the incident, the Lord of Qisan City, Yu Qian, the Minister of Supervision, Xin Yu, the Minister of Anti-Corruption, Wu Qian, the Minister of Public Security, Long Tainan, and the Vice Minister of Logistics, Yin Qingba, were called to the palace. This was obviously to give an explanation for the arrest of Zhou Hua and the other 2. These high-ranking officials all rushed to the palace nervously. Everyone was extremely nervous. For example, the Lord of the city, Yu Qian, was recommended by Minister Zhou Hua. He was guilty of using people inappropriately. Xin Yu and Wu Qian were the 2 leaders in charge of the cadre issue. Naturally, they were guilty of incompetence. Minister Long Tainan was the direct leader of Wanan. But the last one was Yin Qingba. He was only the Vice Minister of Logistics and was only responsible for distributing food. He only had a working relationship with Yan Xiu and the others. Could it be that he also made a mistake? For a moment, everyone looked at Yin Qingba with a strange look. Even he himself was at a loss. He was very sure that he was not involved in this matter. He had no personal relationship with Yan Xiu and the others except for his work relationship. He really couldn't understand why the 6th young master called him here. With his rank, it seemed that it was not enough. No matter what thoughts they had in their hearts, in the end, everyone gathered in a courtyard of the palace. Longwei's figure was everywhere in the vicinity. It was heavily guarded. In the courtyard, only Yang Qindong was sitting on a chair. Beside him stood the inseparable servant Beta Persei. As soon as everyone came in, they saw that there were only 2 empty chairs beside Yang Qindong. For a moment, everyone was silent. The atmosphere was so tense that they didn't say anything other than calling him the 6th young master. Among everyone, only Yu Qian was still stubbornly calling Yang Qindong Bugnam of Gojoseon. Perhaps this was his insistence. He insisted on using the official title of the Great Ming Dynasty Yang Qindong to show that he still had feelings for the Great Ming Dynasty. Although his heart had long been on Xianxia's side, he had no intention of changing the title. Yang Qindong also had no intention of correcting this statement. After seeing Yu Qian, he politely stood up and pointed to the chair beside him. Castellan Yu, please take a seat here. Thank you, Bugnam of Gojoseon, for giving me a seat. Yu Qian didn't stand on ceremony. He liked to be straightforward. If it was something that belonged to him, he wouldn't refuse. After Yu Qian sat down, Yang Qindong looked at the remaining people. Then his gaze fell on Yin Qingba. "Come, Vice Minister Yin, come and sit down too." "Ah." He didn't expect Yang Chendong to call out his name. In this environment where he was the lowest in terms of age, seniority and position, Yin Qingba was a little overwhelmed. He just instinctively shook his head. Beta Persei, who was at the side, had already understood. Seeing that Yin Qingba was still shaking his head, he walked over without saying a word, pulled Yin Qingba over and pressed him down on the only empty chair. Yin Qingba felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. He tried to get up several times, but Beta Persei's arm was so strong that he couldn't move at all. Until Beta Persei saw that he was still struggling, he whispered in his ear, "The sixth young master asked you to sit, so you sit. This is an order." Hearing the word, order, Yin Qingba finally calmed down. Speaking of which, a vice minister of logistics in the Castellan mansion also had a lot of power. In particular, logistics had always been the place with the most benefits. Because of this, many people begged him. Yin Qingba had also seen some of the world. If it weren't for the fact that the people who came today were too high-ranking, he wouldn't have become so nervous. Chapter 1003. Yu Qian and Yin Qingba sat down and the scene quickly became quiet. Yang Chendong, who was sitting in the center position, finally spoke. "Today I called everyone here to give you an explanation regarding Yan Xiao and the other two. At the same time, I also want everyone to give this king an explanation." Finally, they were talking about serious matters. The small courtyard was silent. Under Yang Chendong's signal, Beta Persei behind him took a stack of signed manuscripts and handed them to everyone. "You can take a look. This is the testimony of Yan Xiao and Wanan. After interrogation, they confessed to embezzling the food from the Han people preparation camp. After investigation, the food that was embezzled from their hands was eventually transferred to the market. A total of 28,000 taels of silver was ultimately split between the two of them." When the matter reached this point, everyone in the courtyard took a deep breath. 28,000 taels of silver, split equally between the two of them, that meant that each of them would get 14,000 taels of silver. This had already exceeded the maximum limit of 10,000 taels of silver. Needless to say, they would definitely die. Everyone's reaction fell into Yang Chendong's eyes. Even though he knew that these people already knew what he meant, he still said, "Due to the seriousness of this case, this king has decided to carry out the execution in front of the central square of Crimson City in 3 days. At that time, all the big and small departments in Crimson City must go and watch. If the other officials have nothing important to do, they must also be present. Does anyone have any questions?" No. Knowing that Yang Chendong wanted to use this matter to intimidate the other officials, everyone nodded in agreement. "All right, if everyone has no questions, then we won't waste time on these two vermin. Next, let's talk about the other people and your problems." After investigation, the Minister of Civil Affairs, Zhou Xian, was aware of this matter. Although he adhered to his principles and did not wallow in the mire with Yan Xiao and the others, he clearly knew about it and did not stand up to stop it for the sake of the so-called harmony between colleagues. This is the crime of inaction. This was the first time that everyone had heard about the crime of inaction. For a moment, everyone was puzzled. Yang Chendong quickly gave them an answer. In this prince's opinion, there are only 3 types of officials. The first type is a problematic official. They either abuse their power for personal gain or take bribes. Such an official is called a bad official. The second type is someone who sets an example for others and works diligently. Such a person can be called a good official. But at the same time, there is also the third type, which is a monk ringing the bell every day and muddling through life, adhering to the idea that things do not concern them. They will not stop or participate in anything wrong. They only want to live a stable life. These are the officials of inaction. When they have a problem, this prince calls it the crime of inaction. Zhou Xian was such a leader. He had noticed some disgraceful actions of his deputy Yan Xiao, but he didn't stop it. He didn't point it out and he didn't report it either. He just let the situation continue to develop. What was the difference between such a person and an accomplice? Receiving such a high salary and enjoying the halo of being respected by others, but not doing what he should be doing was also a sin. So this prince has personally chosen 50 mu of good farmland outside Xichen City for him. In the future he can obediently go and farm. There is no need to consider other people's feelings. If he grows well, he will have more. If he doesn't grow well, he will have less if he is lazy. This prince feels that this is very suitable for him. A crime of inaction had actually turned a high-ranking official back into a commoner. This kind of punishment couldn't be said to be light. For a moment, Zhou Xian and the others' faces were flushed with shame. But at the same time, they had a deeper understanding of Yang Qindong's attitude towards officials. That was, since you were in this position, you had to do the work that this position should do. If you wanted to be lazy or even want to do nothing to muddle through, it was clearly impossible. Zhou Hua's matter was thus settled. Following that, Yang Qindong criticized Xinyu, Wu Qian and Long Tainan. The first two were in charge of the self-discipline of officials, but they didn't notice the corrupt official in front of them. This was a dereliction of duty and negligence. For this they were fined 2 months of salary. Long Tainan, as the direct leader of Wannan, was also guilty of negligence and was fined 3 months of salary. After making these decisions, Yang Qindong looked at the three and asked, "How is it? Do you have any objections to this kind of punishment?" "No." The three said in unison. Although they were indeed somewhat wronged, after all, there were so many officials in Xianxia. Especially when there were several provinces that needed to be monitored, it was impossible for them to take care of everything. However, even Zhou Hua had been stripped of his official robes because of his crime of inaction and had become an ordinary farmer. So what if they were fined a few months of their salary? The three didn't have any objections. Yang Qindong looked at Yu Qian and said, "This matter, City Lord Yu has both merits and faults. Because of your merits, this king has arranged a chair for you. After all, without you this matter wouldn't have been exposed so quickly. But at the same time, the person who recommended Zhou Hua was you. You are obviously guilty of negligence, so this king will punish you with half a year of salary. Do you have any objections?" Yu Qian had already stood up. He was always righteous, but at this moment, there was a trace of sweat on his forehead. This minister has no objections. Bugnam of Gojoseon did the right thing. Good, the punishment has been given. As a person who has done a meritorious service, you should continue to sit down. Yang Qindong's voice was full of concern as he said. There was no other way. At the beginning he had set a rule. If there was a problem with the person who recommended the person would be jointly responsible. Seriously speaking, only penalizing Yu Qian with half a year of salary was the lightest punishment. After everyone's questions were asked, Yang Qindong's eyes finally fell on Yin Qingba. He said, "Vice Minister Yin. This subordinate is here." Yin Qingba hurriedly got up, his face was full of anxiety. After listening for a long time he still couldn't figure out why he was here. If he was guilty he should be standing. But if he was meritorious, where was his meritorious service? Seat, you are a person who has done a meritorious service, so this king bestowed you a seat. Everyone else is the same. I hope that the next time you see this king you can all sit down and talk. Yang Qindong gestured for Yin Qingba to sit down again. He didn't forget to use this matter to remind Xinyu and the others. These words caused the three people to nod in unison. Feeling that he had already reminded them, Yang Qindong returned to the main topic. He looked at Yin Qingba and said, "The reason why I said that you have done a meritorious service is because a while ago, someone privately came to you to sell food to you, but you bluntly refused. After that you wanted to find this person but you didn't have any clues. Is that right?" How did the sixth young master know about this? Yin Qingba was stunned by these words. There was indeed such a thing. After all, he was a vice minister in charge of logistics in the city lord manor. He was in charge of the issue of food distribution. Because of this, someone wanted to sell food directly to him, but he refused at the time. After that, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. He thought that this matter must involve something, so he wanted to find the person who came to him to find out the truth. But with his power it was difficult to find that person. He also suffered from no evidence to prove the existence of this matter. He also had no way to report to the Ministry of Supervision and the Ministry of Anti-Corruption. In the end he could only not find out. But he really couldn't understand how Yang Qindong knew about this matter. Facing the confused Yin Qingba, Yang Qindong quickly gave him an answer. "You don't have to think too much about it. The person who came to you was sent by Wan En, a vice minister of the Ministry of Public Security. He didn't want to expose himself, so there weren't many people who could find out about him." This explanation made Yin Qingba immediately understand what happened that day. He immediately said with an ashamed expression, "Sixth young master, this subordinate is also responsible for this matter. If it wasn't for the lack of evidence and the fact that I couldn't report to the relevant departments, I would have done so long ago. Perhaps the matter at the Han People Preparation Camp wouldn't have been delayed until now. No, this isn't your fault. You used your actions to prevent worse things from happening. I'm afraid you don't know. Originally, Xianxia and Wanan were prepared to keep more food, but because they couldn't find a suitable place to sell it, they could only sell it in small quantities in the city. That's why they only kept 20%. From this, it can be seen that you are already a person of merit. This king also sent people to investigate. When you were the Vice Minister of Logistics in the City Lord Manor, you did everything by yourself and were a righteous person. Yes, as a reward you can be the Minister of the Ministry of Civil Affairs. Directly promoting a Vice Minister of Logistics in the City Lord Manor to a minister was not as simple as being promoted by 3 ranks. This decision also stunned everyone. This was because everyone knew that there were 3 vice ministers in the Ministry of Civil Affairs who were quite capable. They were also righteous in their work. Logically speaking, they should have been strong candidates for the minister position. Now that a Vice Minister of Logistics in the City Lord Manor was suddenly demoted to the position of minister, wasn't this a blow to their morale? As if he saw through everyone's thoughts, Yang Chendong said, "A single matter in the Ministry of Civil Affairs caused problems to the minister and vice minister. As their colleagues, the other vice ministers are also responsible for their negligence. Not promoting them is a punishment for them. If anyone has any objections, they can come directly to this king. This king is willing to have a good talk with them." When he said this, he expressed his dissatisfaction, but at the same time he also had the intention of conjugation. Conjugation was most famous in the Qin dynasty. It was first introduced by the famous reformer Xianxia. It meant that several households were conjugated. If one person had a problem, everyone would be guilty. This kind of policy had its advantages and disadvantages. The advantage was that when something happened, everyone could think of the role of supervising each other. The disadvantage was that it often involved the innocent and in the end, it forced the elderly to become the bad guys. Yang Chendong was well aware of the advantages and disadvantages of this, so when he talked about conjugation he didn't use it so seriously. He didn't punish or promote so that it wouldn't make people panic. Chapter 1004. After these words and decisions were made, everyone praised Yang Chendong's political wisdom in their hearts. At the same time they also became more cautious. In the future they needed to be more serious. Not only did they have to be righteous, they also had to influence the people around them to be righteous as well. Yin Qingbo, who was called out, felt as if he had been hit in the head by a big pie. At this moment he was so excited that he didn't know what to say. As usual, he could only tactfully decline and say, "Sixth young master, thank you for your high regard. However, I feel that there are still many things that I need to learn. I'm afraid that I can't do a good job in such an important position as the Minister of Civil Affairs." Yang Chendong smiled in satisfaction at Yin Qingbo's modesty. However, once the appointment was made, it would not be easily changed. Modesty is good, but excessive modesty is not good. The position of minister will be given to you. As long as you have the people in your heart and work seriously and responsibly like the Vice Minister of Logistics in the City Lord's mansion, there is nothing that you can't do well. Then this subordinate will listen to the sixth young master. Seeing that he had said what he needed to say, Yin Qingbo's excited heart slowly calmed down and he accepted the task. All of this is thanks to City Lord Yu. It was you who recommended another talent to us." Yang Chendong smiled and patted Yu Qian's arm. Then he looked at everyone and said, "This king will not be stingy with what I can give to everyone. However, you should not take the things that you should not take. If anyone takes it, then be prepared to be severely punished. Only when the officials are upright can good policies fall on the heads of the people. As long as the people are satisfied, then we will be able to stand firm and go further. Any official who doesn't take the common people seriously, the common people won't take him seriously, and this prince won't take him seriously either. These words are for all of you here, and I'll have to trouble you to pass it on to your other colleagues." "Yes, we will remember." Yu Qian also stood up and solemnly promised Yang Chendong. "Then I hope that the next time I see you all, you can sit here instead of standing." Yang Chendong expressed his hope with a simple sentence. In order to have a seat when they meet the sixth young master, the other officials naturally tried their best to perform well. After the incident with Yan Xiu and the 10,000 times came out, everyone once again saw the sixth young master's determination to run a clean government. To be honest, it was a little harsh for the two powerful vice chiefs to be publicly beheaded just because they had embezzled more than 10,000 taels of silver. Even if they went to earn a salary and other benefits, they would be able to earn it in a few years or more. The treatment that Xianxia gave to the officials was quite good. This was especially true after the implementation of the ticketing system. Those ticketing tools that were issued on time every month could be exchanged for high prices without having to take them out. It was precisely because the treatment was too good that if they made mistakes again, the risk and capital would be too high. As a result, the number of officials who became Xianxia officials in the future was much lower than any other power. Zhou Hua was removed from his official position because of the crime of not doing anything. The response was even more enthusiastic. It turned out that not being greedy and not doing things was not good in Xianxia. Yang Qindong personally said that if an official did not do things for the people, it would be better to go home and sell sweet potatoes. As an official, one had to do things one day at a time. If one did not want to offend people and did not do things, then one might as well not do anything and just go home and be a farmer. Yin Qingba went from being the vice chief of logistics in the city lord's mansion to being the chief of a department. He also told everyone that as long as one worked hard, gold would always shine. This made many of the officials who were originally very capable but were worried that they would not be able to make it big in the future feel relieved. Originally, they were worried that no one would see them lowering their heads to do things. However, with Yin Qingba's example, they did not have to worry so much. They also did not have to put in effort to make their superiors happy and speak up for themselves. Without people giving gifts, there were naturally no people receiving gifts. In an instant, the environment in the bureaucracy became much better. This made the people from the Ministry of Supervision and the Ministry of Anti-Corruption a lot less to do. They had no choice but to shift their attention from Xichen City to the actual provinces under Yangxia's control. The Deputy General of Laos, Hai Qing, suddenly felt that there were a lot of strangers around him. He didn't know if he was being paranoid, so he found an opportunity and asked his confidant to invite Dou Lilong to his house. Hai Qing, Lao Province's Deputy General, was the deputy of General He Guang. He was an important figure in the military. When Kanglin Kingdom was destroyed, he was very proactive and quickly changed the rudder according to the wind. He became someone He Guang trusted and recommended to Lao Province's governor, Luan Shaochen. Step by step, he rose to the position of deputy general. To be able to become a deputy general, he was considered the second most important person in the entire Lao Province's military. Logically speaking, he should be satisfied. However, a man's greed was like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Soon the greedy Hai Qing was dragged down by someone. The person who started this was Dou Lilong. Dou Lilong on the surface was a businessman from Siam. However, he had another secret identity, one of the heads of Siam's intelligence agencies. He was in charge of investigating the matters of the neighboring countries. When possible, he would pull in important people from the opposing factions to his side. From the moment Dou Lilong set his eyes on Hai Qing, the outcome was already decided. Just a total of 20,000 taels of silver was enough for the two of them to call each other brothers. The moment Dou Lilong revealed his identity, Hai Qing could no longer turn back. Xianxia had a rule that anyone who embezzled more than 10,000 taels of silver would be beheaded. For someone like him who had embezzled 20,000 taels of silver, even if he turned himself in, he would at most be spared. It was impossible for him to continue being an official. Since that was the case, other than being used by Dou Lilong, he had no other choice. After receiving the news, Dou Lilong came to the Hai Mansion as a friend and a businessman. He met Hai Qing, who was frightened by the mere twang of a bow. When they met, Hai Qing looked at Dou Lilong in panic and said, "Sir Dou, you must save me." Dou Lilong pretended to be shocked and asked, "What's wrong, General Hai? Did something happen?" "Oh, Sir Dou, you don't know. I might have been targeted. Recently, when I go out, I always find a lot of strangers around." Hai Qing explained the changes around him. He realized that he had embezzled too much and could not turn back. He continued, "Sir Dou, only you can save my life now. Seeing that I have helped your caravan a lot in the past, please help me. Otherwise, you can allow me to be an official in Siam." Although he was cursing Hai Qing in his heart, Dou Lilong still smiled and said, Mr. Hai must be thinking too much. When I arrived at your residence, I didn't find anything wrong. Could it be that I'm thinking too much? No, I'm still a deputy general. I can still observe the situation around me, Hai Qing explained. Just as they were talking, a soldier suddenly reported from outside, saying that General He Guang's personal guard captain, Yan Jiang, had arrived, along with 6 other soldiers. What should we do? Hai Qing became even more flustered after hearing the news. He stood up and paced around in circles. Dou Lilong's eyebrows twitched, but he quickly regained his composure. He smiled and said, It's okay. Many people know that we are friends. Are you saying that I am not allowed to talk to my friends when I am an official? Hai Qing did not relax at all because of this reason. Instead he continued, Lord Dou, you may not know this, but this Yan Jiang relies on He Guang's trust and is usually very domineering. You can't get past him just because he's a friend. Although he won't touch me, I'm afraid that he will take you away. If that happens under torture, can you guarantee that you won't say anything? This. Dou Lilong, who was always calm, finally changed his expression. He did not dare to guarantee anything. With his glib tongue, he boasted that he was not afraid of anything. However, if he was really tortured, who knew how long he could last? He might not even be able to last for a while. Thinking that he absolutely could not be caught, Dou Lilong had no choice but to be ruthless. He made a beheading gesture with his right hand and said, Let's see the situation later. If the other party insists on forcing us, then we will strike first. Kill Yan Jiang? That will definitely infuriate General He Guang. Hai Qing's entire body shuddered and his face turned pale. What? Do you think that if you don't kill now, others won't kill you? Let me tell you, you can only move forward now. Think about it. Once you accomplish something big, our king will be happy. He will definitely give you a high post and generous salary. It is even possible that he will help you people of Kanglan restore your country. It is better than being scolded as a traitor. Dou Lilong was going all out. He did not expect the situation to be so serious. If he knew, he would not have appeared so easily. In the courtyard of the high residence, Yan Jiang, who was dressed in armor, led 6 soldiers and paced back and forth in the courtyard. After not seeing Hai Qing for a long time, he had lost count of how many times he had lost his temper. Finally, a manager came. He said that the High General was meeting with guests in the backyard and it was not convenient for him to come over. He asked Captain Yan to go over himself. Let's go. We have to take Dou Lilong away today no matter what. Yan Jiang said loudly. Then he led his 6 subordinates to the backyard. Not long after they walked to the backyard, the door to the front yard was completely closed from the inside. In the living room of the backyard, Hai Qing and Dou Lilong were sitting at a table with food and drinks. Yan Jiang's sudden appearance instantly broke the harmonious atmosphere. Deputy General Hai, I suspect that this Siamese merchant Dou Lilong is a spy from the enemy country. I want to take him away now. I hope that you can make it easy for us. Chapter 1005. The fact that he wanted to arrest Hai Qing showed that he was strong enough. However, this sentence also made Hai Qing unhappy. Captain Yan, Dou Lilong is my friend. It's not good to be so rude in front of my friend. Hai Qing was a deputy general. He was someone who could be ranked in front of Wan Shaochen. Yan Jiang was only the captain of He Guang's bodyguards. He was a family general in General He's residence. The difference in status between the two was like heaven and earth. However, He Guang placed a lot of importance on this personal guard captain and gave him a lot of power. That was why when the captain faced Hai Qing, he did not have the slightest intention of backing down. Deputy General Hai, I am here on official business. If you insist on stopping me, do you want me to ask the general to come and talk? Yan Jiang knew the difference in status and knew that it was useless to say more. He directly brought up He Guang. He believed that the other party would not dare to refuse. As expected, once He Guang was brought up, Hai Qing's attitude became much softer. There's no need for that. Is there some misunderstanding? How about this, Captain Yan, please come over and have a drink. If you still can't talk, then you can take my guest away. Yan Jiang didn't suspect anything. After agreeing, he strode forward to the table and poured himself a glass of wine. He raised his glass to Hai Qing and said, Deputy General Hai, I'm sorry to offend you like this. After speaking, Yanjiang raised his head and poured the wine into his mouth. Hai Qing took this opportunity to take out a knife that he had prepared under the table and stabbed towards Yanjiang's chest. Caught off guard, Yanjiang's body was pierced by a knife. The wine glass slipped from his hand. He stared at Hai Qing in disbelief. He wanted to say something, but in the end, because of his severe injuries, he fell to the ground with a plop. At the same time, more than 10 of Hai Qing's bodyguards appeared in the backyard. They surrounded the 6 people that Yanjiang brought. First, they shot 3 of them with arrows. Then they engaged in close combat. After paying the price of 1 dead and 1 injured, the 6 people were all dead. Take them away and deal with them properly. With the situation settled, Hai Qing waved to his loyal subordinates. He then looked at Dou Lilong and sighed. This time I have no other choice. Sir Dou, you can rest assured. Don't worry. I have always been very confident in the Sea General. Are you sure that He Guang doesn't know about Yanjiang's visit? Dou Lilong asked worriedly. Of course not. Based on my understanding of Yanjiang, if he had asked for General He's permission beforehand, he wouldn't have drunk my wine this time. It's just that I can't hide this for too long. If I go missing for too long, it might arouse suspicion. Should I pack up and follow Doda to Siam? Hai Qing became anxious again. Don't worry. I will find someone to take the blame for this. What you need to do now is to keep developing your strength. Dou Lilong was much calmer. He then threw out a temptation that Hai Qing could not refuse. General Hai, have you never thought of replacing He Guang? Are you saying that I should be the general here? Hai Qing's breathing became heavier as he spoke. A general and a deputy general. It might seem like there was only a difference of 1 word, but the real difference in power was like heaven and earth. If he could become the general, he would not have to ask for permission for everything. It would be much more convenient for him to do many things. That's right. If we can chase Luan Shaochen and the others out of Laos, you can choose a suitable puppet to become the king of Lansong. By then you will have the absolute power. Then with the support of Siam, you won't have to be afraid of anyone. Dou Lilong continued to persuade him. Hai Qing did not answer immediately. It was obvious that he was really tempted. Once it was done, he would no longer be the deputy general. He would be the grand tutor of a country. Everything in the country would have to depend on him. How glorious and glorious would that be? Baiming was busy building a bank and looting money. Nanming was busy fighting wars and recovering lost land. Yang Qindong had a rare period of peace. Other than going to some research institutes and factories to inspect and listen to the work reports of some departments, he spent most of his time with his wives and little Lele. After many days of intimate contact, Lele finally opened her mouth to accept Yang Qindong as her father. The relationship between the father and daughter became closer day by day. It was to the extent that little Lele would search the entire palace for her father if she did not see him for a while. After every night of hard work, there was finally good news. The first wife, Hu Yen, was pregnant. After little Lele, the 6th young master was going to have a son. When the news came out, there was a burst of cheers from the streets and alleys of Chichin City. No matter what, Lele was still a girl. Everything in the future could not be controlled by a girl. In addition, Hu Yen was the first wife. In some people's eyes, she was like a queen. Only her son would be the legitimate son. Only then would the Yang family have a true descendant. After a moment of jubilation, Yangshi seemed to have calmed down at this moment. He was like a big tree that was in the process of growing, and his wings were plump. At the same time, some other factions were not idle. Beneath the calm surface there was a storm. In 1450, the Arab merchant Said Abu Bakr established an Islamic regime in the southern Philippines. This merchant called Abu Bakr was very smart and had great ambitions. He had been doing business since his youth and was used to seeing too many people using their power to oppress merchants. From then on, he wanted to build his own force and have the final say. Only then would he not be oppressed and oppressed by others. In the end, after being selected, he came to the southern part of the Philippines and established his first regime there. He then extended his influence to Basilan Island, Palawan Island, Zamboanga Island, Borneo, Amal Island, and other places. And just when he wanted to establish a foothold here and continue to expand, there was a sudden change in Luzon Island. The 5-star army occupied this place and disrupted his plans. After all, Abu Bakr was a merchant. The most important thing was profit. He knew the importance of taking the initiative. Since the 5-star army had occupied Luzon Island, it was impossible for him to expel people. The only thing he could do was to continue expanding his territory. Beginning in the second month of 1456, he successively sent troops to capture the eastern island of Catanius, the western island of Mindoro, as well as the central island of Langburn and Titsao. By the end of the fourth month, the whole Philippine archipelago, with the exception of Luzon and the nearer island of Polillo, was under Abubart's control. When Xianxia occupied Luzon Island, the main purpose was to protect the south side of Ryukyu Island and control the sea between the two islands. He did not intend to occupy all the islands. This allowed Abu Bakr to succeed time and time again. It wasn't until the other party had taken control of most of the islands that the city lord of Luzon Island, Li Xing, started to panic. Feeling the threat and danger, he immediately sent a telegram to the city lord's residence in Red Nest City to ask for further instructions. During this period, the inflated Abu Bakr was not satisfied with the status quo. He first changed the name of Sulu, a name that appeared in China's history books long ago, to Daif and declared himself the king of Daif. Then he sent out his capable General Duterte to attack Polillo Island. This was more of a test. He wanted to see what kind of reaction the five-star army would have if they were already at their doorstep. Polillo Island was an island in the northeast of the Philippines. It covered an area of 600 square kilometers. It was mainly rugged hills. The highest point on the island was 350 meters above sea level. Polillo Island did not have a dry season. Most of the rain was concentrated between November and January. This island was not very big and did not attract much attention. Thus, it could stay out of trouble. There were less than 20,000 people on the island, and they mainly relied on fishing for a living. Because of Abu Bakr's greed, the peaceful area finally attracted the flames of war. When General Duterte and his 2,000 soldiers landed on the island, the lives of the people here were shattered, and nearly 20,000 people were turned into slaves in an instant. After Duterte entered the island, he did all kinds of evil. Any beautiful women were taken to the barracks. Not only were they humiliated, but they also asked the people on the island to make them food and drink. If they were not happy or slow, they would be punished with murder. It was extremely cruel. This practice naturally aroused the anger of the Aborigines on the island. Some young men who were proficient in swimming and sailing volunteered to leave the island that they had lived on for many years under the cover of the night. They rowed their boats to the nearby Luzon Island to seek help. The distance between the two islands was very close. Occasionally there would be some interaction. According to the people on Luzon Island, although the island was occupied by a force called the Five-Star Army, the people there lived as before. Not only were they not affected by the flames of war, their lives were very orderly. It was said that even the quality of life had improved a lot. They could fish, weave and farm and sell food to the Five-Star Army in exchange for remuneration. With an increase in income, the quality of life had improved. Everyone's face was filled with joy. Although General Duterte was extremely cruel and did not treat the people as humans, he was still vigilant. After a few young men rowed away, he discovered them. He immediately sent 200 soldiers to chase after them in 5 fast boats bought by Abu Bakr from the west. Although the speed of this kind of fast ship could not compare to the fast ships built by the 5-star military shipyards, it was still much faster than ordinary ships. It did not take long for them to see the tail of the fleeing ship. Then shouts sounded from all directions and the sound of bows and arrows began to be fired. Chapter 1006. Just as the 5 fast boats were about to surround the small boat that had escaped, a boat with a 5-starred red flag sailed over in the night. This was not an official boat, but a fishing boat belonging to the residents of Luzon. The sudden encounter was not part of the plan. The soldiers who were used to riding roughshod over Polillo Island, when they saw the fishing boat, they only hesitated for a moment before making the decision to sink the 2 boats so that the incident would not be known to the world. Originally, after seeing the 5-starred flag, the escaping youngsters thought that they had seen their savior. However, when they saw that the 5-starred ship didn't have any combat power, and the enemy's ship continued to shoot arrows, with no intention of letting them go, they realized that they had implicated the enemy. They repeatedly shouted, announcing their identity and purpose, and at the same time, asking the people on the 5-starred ship to leave immediately and not be implicated. However, it was too late to say anything at this time. Since they chose to attack, of course they would not let anyone leave. 5 Dafei clippers flew over and kept attacking. One of the clippers was even equipped with cannons. One of the cannons hit the fishing boat of Luzon Island, causing it to shake and crumble. The situation was so dangerous that the crew of the fishing boat began to abandon the boat. Some of the good swimmers took a wooden board and paddled towards the direction of Port Luzon. They had tears in their eyes as they wanted to pass on the news of being attacked by the Dafei kingdom. They clearly remembered that the new governor of Luzon, Li Xing, had said that as long as they hung the 5-starred red flag, no one in this area would make things difficult for them. Otherwise, they would suffer 10 times, 100 times, or even 1,000 times the retaliation. The 5 Dafei clippers continued to attack. After an hour, the 2 ships that were besieged were sunk one after another. Then they checked the sea area again and killed more than a dozen crew members who were swimming in the sea. After seeing that there were no survivors, they whistled and left triumphantly. This battle was known as the Sorrow of Luzon in the history of Xianxia. Since Yang Chendong subdued Kaohsiung until now, in the past 8 years, any boat with the 5-starred red flag had not been attacked for no reason. The Dafei kingdom had set a precedent. People who could walk on the sea all year round, needless to say there were always very good swimmers. The first mate of the fishing boat that belonged to Luzon province, Wang Li, belonged to the category of people who were particularly good at swimming. After the boat was hit, he jumped into his hands with a wooden board. Because his swimming speed was very fast, he left the patrol range of the Daoist country's fast boat and escaped. After that, Wang Li exerted all his strength, and based on his experience he found a direction in the dark sea. Finally, after 2 days, when he was exhausted, he encountered other ships and was rescued. When he woke up after being fed the hot rice soup, the first thing he said was that there was danger ahead and he wanted to see Governor Li Xing. Then he fainted. The fishing boats were all approved by the Luzon provincial government, and there was a connection between them. Someone recognized the chief officer, and the captain immediately gave the order to return to Port Luzon. A day later, Wang Li and the others returned to Luzon Island, and then they were escorted to the provincial government. Governor Li Xing warmly received them. After knowing what happened, he was very angry. In front of hundreds of fishing boats, he expressed that they would immediately send people to investigate this matter. If everything was true, then the Daoist country would have to give an explanation. Admitting fault, apologizing, and compensation were all necessary. Otherwise, the 5-star army would have the right to use force to get justice. Li Xing said so, and he did so. He called the Luzon Island garrison commander Hang He and ordered him to go to the location of the incident. He had to prove that there was a sea battle there and it was not man-made damage or natural damage. In short, there had to be evidence. Speaking of which, Xianxia did not have many soldiers stationed on Luzon Island. Other than a garrison of 2,000 people, there was a public security team of 3,000 to 4,000 people. It was just that the public security was scattered. Normally they could maintain law and order, but once there was a battle the garrison would have to move first. After Hang He received the mission, he took the fast boat left by the 5-star army and set off, heading straight to a location not far from Polillo Island. Li Xing also sent a telegram to the Chigang City Lord Mansion, requesting that if there was a change in the situation, the 5-star Army Navy could provide support. In the Chigang City Lord Mansion, the Deputy City Lord in charge of military affairs sent the telegram to Zhou Xian, and the sound of a table being slammed sounded. Someone once said that he was too humble, saying that he was loyal to the people of the Ming dynasty, and not to the emperor of the dynasty. From this, it could be seen that he valued the people very much. It was precisely because of this that he and Yang Chendong had more to talk about. After being robbed here by a shady method, he could still concentrate on his work. Now that he heard that someone actually took the initiative to challenge the power of the 5-star army, how could he let it go? He immediately asked his assistant to immediately contact the deputy commander of the navy, Kaohsiung, and he wanted to meet with him to discuss the matter. Just over an hour later, Kaohsiung rode a bicycle to the City Lord Mansion. The two big shots discussed the matter of Luzon Island in detail and then came to a consensus. Finally, they decided to report this matter to the 6th young master. They both believed that this matter had already touched Yang Chendong's bottom line. If they reported it, they would be able to obtain a faster and better solution. In the palace, Yang Chendong was taking a walk with the first Madam Hu Yan. Women who were pregnant always liked to be sentimental. Yang Qindong would walk with her whenever he had the time, not only comforting her, but also helping her train her body. It was killing two birds with one stone. Suddenly hearing that Yu Qian and Gao Xiong had come together, his intuition told him that this must be a big matter. Dong Shui, business is more important, you should go. I'm going to talk to my second sister, and ask for some good medicine to prevent miscarriage. Hu Yan said very considerately. Okay, be careful when you walk. Yang Qindong laughed and watched Hu Yan leave. But when he turned around, his expression became a lot more dignified. Needless to say, for the city lord and the deputy commander of the navy to come see him together, it must be an important matter. Connecting the fact that Gao Xiong came with them and not Leng Song, the deputy commander of the army, it was very likely to be related to the matter at sea. Yang Qindong appeared very quickly. Yu Qian and Gao Xiong didn't even finish a cup of tea before he came to the living room. Seeing that the two were about to get up, he made a gesture of inviting them to sit, and sat down on the chair in the middle and said, "Speak, did something unexpected happen?" Sixth young master is wise. Gao Xiong flattered. Yu Qian was a lot calmer. He sent the telegram from Mayor Li Xing, governor, to Yang Qindong and said, "Bugnam of Gozhouzian, Mayor Li sent a telegram saying that a fishing boat in Luzon City, Xianxia's name for Luzon Island, was attacked. According to Chief Officer Wang Li, who escaped, it was the fast ships of the recently established Dafei Kingdom that attacked." Yang Qindong took the telegram and looked at it carefully, then raised his head. The telegram said that the fishing boat hung a 5-star flag. Could it be that someone dared to attack? Yes, sixth young master. This is what made us angry. They ignored our flag, which is clearly a provocation. Previously, we didn't have many immigrants in our hands and the distribution of the islands was too loose. We also had the new Second Army established and North Korea provoked us, so we didn't send troops to attack them. However, this became the reason why they looked down on us. This is too much. I think that we should immediately send troops to Song City to declare our sovereignty. If necessary, we can strengthen the patrols at sea as a deterrent. As the deputy commander of the navy, Gao Xiong's words represented the will of the entire navy. Listening to Gao Xiong's report, Yang Qindong's eyes flashed. Is this the navy's idea, or does the mayor's office have the same idea? The mayor's office is still waiting for the latest telegram. Didn't they say that Hang He, the commander of the Song City Garrison Regiment, has already gone to investigate? Yu Qian expressed his experienced and astute opinion. It was obvious that he wanted to get evidence first. This was also in line with the Han people's principle of doing things, which was to plan before acting. The results of the investigation? Is it really that important? Yang Qindong suddenly laughed, which made Yu Qian and Gao Xiong confused. They didn't understand what Yang Qindong meant. Without waiting for the two to figure it out, Yang Qindong already spoke. They have already sunk our ships. How long do we have to wait? I think we should order the troops to gather now and show these daring daft country how powerful we are. Do it now? But we don't have enough evidence. Yu Qian was shocked when he heard Yang Qindong so boldly decide to send troops. Evidence? Why do we need evidence? Don't you know what "don't need evidence" means? Moreover, it's already a fact that our fishing ships were sunk. The only ones who can do this in those waters are the daft country's army. So what are we waiting for? Yang Qindong sneered. In the future, the words "don't need evidence" had restricted the development of a country. Considering various reasons, there were some things that had to be endured. Now that Xianxia's navy was so powerful, it was time to give them a taste of their own medicine. As the founder of Xianxia, the commander of Xianxia's 3 armies, Yang Qindong gave this order. Naturally, the people under him could only obey. In addition, it was indeed the daft country that provoked them first, so it was reasonable for them to send an army to give an appropriate counterattack. Yu Qian and Gao Xiong quickly agreed with Yang Qindong's decision. But what they didn't know was that this time, Yang Qindong didn't just want to teach the daft country a small lesson, but when he made his move, he wanted to destroy the country. There were already 600,000 literate and skilled commoners in Xianxia City who had made preparations to migrate. Moreover, under the Southern Ming Dynasty's war, there were still many Han commoners rushing to Mount Liang's containment formation every day, turning into Xianxia City. Chapter 1007. Could be imagined that in the future, there would be more and more knowledgeable Han people. With such confidence, it was time to take over the entire archipelago. Previously he didn't make a move because he didn't have a good reason. Now that the other side had taken the initiative to provoke him, how could he let go of such an opportunity? Yang Chendong was determined to deal with the Dafei kingdom. Gao Xiong's navy naturally cooperated with him. After a discussion between the three of them, they decided to mobilize the entire 1st Sea Army. That was the 1st Sea Division, 2nd Sea Division and 3rd Sea Division. They would launch a fierce attack on the Dafei kingdom from 3 different directions. They had to make the other side suffer. They had to let them and the surrounding countries know what the consequences of offending the 5-star army were. Order the new 2nd Army's 6th Sea Division to strengthen the patrols. If there are any other forces that try to interfere, don't hesitate to beat them back. At the same time, the 5th Sea Division stationed in North Korea can also be transferred back. That place can be left to the local garrison. What we need to do now is to do our best to win this battle. Yang Chendong said in a powerful voice. This order was very similar to Yang Chendong's usual approach. Either he didn't make a move or he would go all out. If he could destroy a country, he would destroy it. If he couldn't destroy it, he would destroy it. If he couldn't destroy it, he would destroy it. After the order was issued, the war machine started. The navy quickly began to assemble. All the officers who were visiting their families had to report back to their respective units. At the same time, the city lord's manor was also making various preparations. Under the overall command, the newly developed 100mm mortar shells were quickly delivered to the 1st Sea Division for use. 600,000 Han people voluntarily signed up, and 300,000 people were ready to enter the archipelago at any time. The condition was that as long as they were Han people who entered the archipelago, they would be given a job. For example, they would be given a job in the local government. If they met the conditions, they would be given a job in the public security, hospital, school, industry and commerce, government, tax and other departments. Not only did the 300,000 Han people have to prepare for migration, the other provinces also had to prepare for the migration of people. Each province had to prepare at least 200,000 people. At the same time, they had to prepare to accept a certain number of indigenous people. This kind of interchangeable population exchange could often solve the problem of the local people huddling together to the greatest extent, allowing them to quickly forget who they were before and better join the Han family. Above the sea, under Ma Li's guidance, Captain Heng He finally found the remnants of the ship that had been hit by the cannon fire. From the surface, one could clearly see that it had been hit by a cannon. With this piece of evidence, the ship quickly turned back and headed straight for the port of Luzon. But just as the ship turned around, dozens of Great F country ships suddenly appeared around the sea. They were the Great F country ships led by Duterte. He had long expected that the 5-star army would come to this area to search and inspect, so he had been waiting here. Initially he wanted to wait for them to get closer, but when he saw that his prey was about to leave, he couldn't hide anymore. He jumped out directly, wanting to leave Heng He and the others here. Is it a Dafei ship? Heng He saw the enemy ships around him and his eyes flashed with anger. This kind of encirclement exposed their ambitions without a doubt. Unfortunately, the ship he was on was not the fishing ship from before. He was piloting a level 3 warship left behind by the Navy in Song City. Not only did it have a constant speed, it also had a powerful 100mm mortar that could hit a target more than 10 miles away. At that time it could be said to be the top artillery. Order the ship to speed up and leave. Order the artillery to reload the shells and adjust the range. If any ship dares to block our way, blow it up. Heng He said loudly. His order also made the crew members excited, and they shouted loudly to make various preparations. Although they were surrounded, the 5-star warship did not intend to surrender. Instead it sped up, which greatly exceeded Duterte's expectations. He thought that the other party would take the initiative to stop and reason with him. Didn't all Han people do this? At that time he would be able to kill everyone on the ship at a close distance and occupy the ship. He could see that this ship was not simple. Once it belonged to him, after going back to study it, it should be able to promote the development of their ships. Heng He was originally a company commander in the Cold Front Navy. At that time, it was City Lord Li Xing who took a fancy to him and wanted him to stay, so he retired from the Cold Front Navy and transferred to the Garrison Regiment as the commander. Speaking of which, he was promoted a few ranks, but he still missed the time when he was a cold front Navy officer. Wherever he went, he was majestic. This kind of person, after many years of training, was warlike in his bones, and it was even more impossible to make him surrender. Therefore, when he gave the order to charge out and bombard the ships blocking their way, it really caught the Dauphin Navy off guard. The combat power of the garrison regiment was very ordinary. Most of them were made up of foreign men who had only been trained and had not experienced real combat. They might be able to suppress bandits, but they were not mature enough to fight a big battle like this. Fortunately, this time Hang He brought out the elites of the regiment, and there were a few cold front members among them. There was no problem with them controlling the mortar. After adjusting the direction of the mortar and locking onto the target, a shot was fired directly at the Dauphin Navy ship blocking their way. One of the advantages of the mortar was that it was more accurate to lock onto the target. In addition, the loading speed of the mortar was fast. Before the enemy was ready, the mortar was fired and hit the target. The powerful explosion and power almost flattened the enemy's ship. With one shot, the ship's main personnel were all killed or injured. It completely lost its combat power and could no longer pose any threat. This was a one-shot hit. The third-level warship that sped up rushed out of the encirclement before the Dauphin Navy could react. It attracted the dissatisfied roar of Duterte. "Quick, catch up. We must destroy him. He dares to make an enemy of our Dauphin Navy. He will definitely die." The clamoring Duterte led dozens of other Dauphin Navy ships to chase after them. The sound of gunfire was heard, and huge waves were set off one after another on the originally calm sea. However, in front of the third-level warship, not a single shell could lock onto the target and hit the third-level warship. Hang He glanced back with a look of disdain on his face, but then his expression turned serious. The current situation was that he was lucky to escape. In the end, he was still the one being chased. If he was not careful, he might be caught by the enemy. If his luck was bad and he was hit by a shell, then in this vast sea he would not be able to call for help. Speed up and move closer to the Luzon port. Thinking of the 4 new mortars installed at the Luzon port, Hang He's heart calmed down a lot. According to the current situation, he could only think of a way to return to the port and then rely on the danger to defend. One chasing and one escaping, this scene played out on the sea. Under the full power of the third-level warship flying the 5-star flag, the distance between the two sides gradually increased. Hang He's luck was still good. Even when he was out of the enemy's range of attack, he was still hit by a shell. He knew that he was temporarily safe. But then he began to worry about the Luzon port. Still, other than the 4 mortars arranged at the Luzon port, there were no other defensive measures. With the average combat power of the Song City garrison, would they be able to stop 2,000 enemies? Once the enemy rushed to the coast, what kind of destruction and impact would it bring? But if they did not retreat to the Luzon port, where could they go? This third-level warship ran on coal. Considering the mission this time, it was equipped with about the same amount of raw materials. If they could not rush back as usual, they could face the predicament of running out of energy at any time. Although they had considered such a thing when they were developing the Level 3 naval battle system, and if they had no other choice they could row the boats manually. However, with that kind of speed, wouldn't the enemy catch up to them very quickly? Speed up and return, then quickly gather the soldiers. Guard the port and ask for help from the higher-ups. In the end, Hang He made the decision to return to the port quickly. Compared to taking the risk of running in circles with the enemy, it was better to return to the port and use the terrain to counterattack. As one chased and one fled, the distance between the two sides kept increasing. However, it was obvious that the enemy behind him was enraged. They chased after Hang He with no intention of giving up. Judging from the direction the enemy was heading, it was likely that they were heading to the Luzon port. Considering that the battle had already begun, there was no need to wait any longer. Duterte could not help but want to show off his strength, rush to the Luzon port and occupy the entire Song City. Before coming, Duterte had already read the detailed information about Song City. He knew that the 5-star army only had a garrison here. The garrison had the same number of people as him, 2,000. Moreover, their combat power was far inferior to his. The enemy was just a bunch of new recruits. At the very least, many people in his team had been pirates nearby and had seen life and death. They were all bought by Abu Burkle with a large sum of money to serve him. In terms of combat power, he should not be afraid of them. More importantly, Duterte also knew that the garrison of Song City mostly used cold weapons such as knives, spears and swords. Furthermore, he had 200 hollow tongs and 50 flintlock pistols in his army. The king had spent a lot of money to purchase them from Western merchant ships. This was where his advantage lay. If he used it well, occupying the entire Luzon island would not be a problem. At that time he would become the hero of the entire Daoist country. It could only be said that he was short-sighted. The inexperienced Duterte did not know how powerful the five-star army was. He, who did not live in this sea area before, thought that the five-star army was just like the natives of the mainland. After firing a few cannons and firing a few shots, the other party would really admit defeat and surrender. Chapter 1008. He couldn't imagine the power of the five-star army. One chased while the other fled. Nearly a day later at dawn, Hang He took the lead and returned to Port Luzon. As soon as the warship came to a stop before the wooden planks connected to the land were fully lowered, he had already dashed out. While shouting for everyone to evacuate, he ran towards the 4 mortar turrets on the port. Port Luzon and even the entire Luzon island hadn't experienced war for many years. Last time the five-star army came, but they didn't encounter any resistance and occupied the entire island. Many people didn't have a better understanding of the cruelty and horror of war. Even though Hang and his comrades were running and shouting, not many people really paid attention to them. There were even some fishermen who continued to walk toward the fishing boats anchored at the port, as though they didn't care about the situation. Just as Hang He and the others ran to the turrets and began to shout for their comrades to raise the shells and adjust the muzzle of the cannons, dozens of warships flying the flag of the Daoist country appeared. Duterte, who was mixed in the crowd, shouted and fired his cannons, his face full of excitement. The sound of the cannons roared. About 20 cannons on the dozens of ships were suddenly fired, making earth-shattering sounds. The shells fell on the ships anchored at Port Luzon. In a short time, countless fishing boats were hit. Not long after, the only third-level warship of the Song City garrison was also hit and sank. Cannons were ruthless. They wouldn't let you go just because you were old, women, children, or civilians. Wherever the cannons landed, hundreds and thousands of civilians were covered. Amid the screams, their lives were mercilessly devoured. For a time the port was in chaos. Cries, shouts, cannons and gunshots mixed together, forming a scene of hell. Taking advantage of the chaos, the Daoist country navy opened a path with cannons and began to approach Port Luzon, preparing to land. Fire! In the turrets on the port, Hang He had already adjusted the firing direction of a mortar. After the first shell was loaded, the counterattack began. The cannons flew in the air and landed on a battleship outside the port, causing an even bigger explosion. At the same time, the other 3 cannons did not separate and began to fire back. They hit the Daoist Kingdom's ships that had not yet entered the port, causing waves of cries and cries for help from the soldiers. The counterattack began. 4 more accurate and powerful mortars suppressed the fierce attack of the Great F country and heavily hit the ships behind the enemy's team. However, for the Great F country soldiers who had already docked their ships and were mixed with many civilians, they felt powerless. If he retracted the cannons, the civilians would be hurt, but if he didn't, the enemy might take the opportunity to charge forward. At this moment, Hang He's eyes were filled with uncertainty and hesitation. As a former member of the Cold Front, he could fire cannons, fire guns, or even draw his sword at the enemy without fear. However, he really couldn't do anything to the people who had already submitted to him. "Leader, what should we do? The enemy is coming." Seeing that Hang He was in a daze, a platoon commander on the side asked anxiously. After a few seconds, Hang He's voice sounded, "Order the soldiers to prepare their weapons and prepare for battle." After hesitating for a while, he finally did not give the order to harm the civilians. The responsibility of a soldier was to protect the safety of the area. If he needed to use the civilians as a stepping stone when the war came, he really couldn't bring himself to give such an order. A few of the foreign race company commanders who had joined later were confused when they heard that Hang He had abandoned the cannons and wanted to use people to fight the muskets. However, Hang He's attitude was very firm as he said, "This is an order." Just these 4 words alone already represented a lot of content. No matter how unwilling they were, it was an iron law for soldiers to obey orders. The few company commanders could only shake their heads and walk out of the turrets with resentment on their faces. At the same time, they looked as if they were ready to die. They began to command their soldiers to prepare for defense and counterattack. Most of the time you couldn't have your cake and eat it too. Hang He understood this principle. He also knew that if he was still serving in the cold front, the officers above would definitely make the same choice as him. Therefore he did not regret it. He was only afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold on until the main force of the cold front arrived. If the enemy really charged forward and abandoned Luzon port, then he would be condemned for eternity. The moment the cannons were fired, the newly built Luzon city, which was not far from the port, sensed it. As the city lord, Li Xing immediately called for a telegraph operator and asked him to immediately send a distress signal to the city lord's mansion, the Navy headquarters, and even the 6th Young Master's radio station. While sending the telegram, Li Xing made the decision to close all 4 gates of Luzon City. Then he began to call for some of the reserve militia in the city lord's mansion. He took out the limited weapons in the city lord's mansion's warehouse and asked them to defend the city together with him for the safety of his home. In Port Luzon, Duterte braved the danger of being swallowed by the cannons and walked out of the warship. He was surprised to find that there were no cannons at this distance. He looked around in confusion. When he saw many local citizens lying on the ground trembling, he finally understood everything. He laughed and said to his subordinates, "Do you see that? Our opponents are stupid. For the sake of the safety of these lowly citizens, they didn't dare to open fire and allowed us to board the port. This is an act of suicide." "That's right, General. Your chance to make a big contribution has come. As long as there are no cannons, no one will be a match for us with our firearms," the soldiers quickly flattered. "You're right. Let's make a big contribution. Charge." Duterte laughed loudly and began to organize the soldiers who had boarded the port to launch an assault. There was no difference in military strength and it was a small-scale battle. The advantage of firearms could be put to good use. When Duterte led his troops to charge, He organized his men to counterattack. Every time there was a burst of gunfire, a dozen or so garrison soldiers would fall to the ground covered in blood. They counterattacked 3 times in a row. Although they had stopped the enemy's advance, they had also lost about 100 people. Seeing this result, the battalion commander finally couldn't help but say, "Commander, if this continues, I'm afraid we'll all die. If we can't do it, then we'll open fire." "We can't open fire. That will only hurt the citizens. Even if we win, we'll be sinners. We won't be able to answer to the 6th Young Master." "Everyone hold on. I'm sure the city lord already knows about this and will inform the nearby navy. As long as everyone holds on, we can win." He stubbornly insisted on his decision. He knew very well that if he died protecting the people, the Marine Army wouldn't punish him for his crimes. They would only praise him and his family would be well taken care of. On the other hand, if he didn't care about the safety of the citizens and opened fire to protect himself, then regardless of whether he won or not, he would be punished by the military. At that time his family would be implicated. Even if he died, he would have to bear a bad reputation. He's insistence caused the garrison to suffer even greater losses in the following battle. Originally, there were only 2 battalions of soldiers outside the port. After 5 or 6 waves of attacks, the number of casualties had reached half. If this continued, it would take at most 2 hours for the remaining 400 soldiers to lose their lives. The battalion commander was seriously injured and was carried away. The battalion commander of the 2nd Battalion had also led the soldiers to charge twice and was slightly injured. He immediately decided to lead the counterattack. Anyway, as long as he had a breath left, he would not let the enemy reach the fort. As long as he had a breath left, he would not fire at the port and hurt a single citizen. "Commander, you are the backbone of everyone. You can't lead the team." When the battalion commander of the 2nd Battalion was about to launch another counterattack, he saw He stand up. How could he let that happen? He immediately expressed his opposition. "Okay, don't argue at this time. If you can all charge, why can't I, the commander, do the same? If I die, then you will be the commander. If you die, then the company commander below you will be the commander. In short, there is still one person who must protect the fort. If unfortunately we are all going to die, then the last person will set off the explosives. These 4 mortars must not be left to the enemy. This is our mission. Do you all understand?" These words were like the last words left before death. The battalion commander of the 2nd Battalion didn't know what to say. He could only watch as Hang He took his bow and rushed out of the fort. He was worthy of being the former commander of the Cold Front Company. His individual quality was extremely strong. After he rushed out of the fort, he aimed at the enemy less than 100 meters away and released arrows. 1 arrow, 2 arrows, and he killed 2 soldiers of the Great F Kingdom who were armed with guns. A bullet flew past his body and left a bloody wound on his leg. He moved his right leg and found that it was only a scratch. It wasn't a big problem. He continued to shoot arrows. At the same time, he touched his waist sword and tried to get closer to the enemy. He wanted to find a way to kill a few more in close combat. Other than the warships that were destroyed by the cannon fire, Duterte only brought 1,300 to 400 soldiers to the port. Together with the flintlocks, there were only 200 weapons. Once a soldier died, other soldiers would quickly replace him. This allowed him to maintain enough firepower to suppress the enemy. After killing 200 of the enemy's people and losing 100 of his own people, Duterte's face was a bit ugly. Didn't the intelligence say that this garrison regiment was just established and didn't have much combat power? Why were they still so difficult to deal with? It had been almost 2 hours since they entered the port. This was the territory of the 5-Star Army. If he couldn't quickly end the battle, who knew if the 5-Star Army's reinforcements would arrive? Chapter 1009. Thinking that things might change if he delayed any longer, Duterte also became ruthless. He shouted angrily at more than 200 gun-wielding subordinates. This time everyone, let's go together. The enemy doesn't have many people left. We only need 1 charge to obtain the final victory. Anyone who kills the enemy will be heavily rewarded. Listen to my command and attack together. The general gave an order. Whether they were willing or not, they had to carry it out. In addition, they already had the advantage in numbers. The 200 men with guns stood up from the ground with a roar. They divided into 3 echelons and began to move forward. Whenever they saw the shadows of the 5-Star Army, they would immediately fire and then retreat to the echelons behind them. They would continue to reload and prepare to launch a new round of attacks. As a result, they formed a type of suppressive fire that made the 5-Star Army unable to raise their heads. Hang He was less than 60 meters away from the DAF soldiers. Originally, he was thinking of how to get close to the enemy and kill them with his sword. That way the enemy could only fire 1 shot at a time. But when he saw the enemy coming in an orderly manner, his eyes had a sense of helplessness. In this situation, even if he jumped out, he would only become a target. The enemy was getting closer and closer. The soldiers in the fort were suppressed by the guns and could not raise their heads to fight back. Hang He and the dozens of soldiers outside were also suppressed and could not show their heads. The sound of footsteps was getting closer and closer. Everyone, prepare to fight back with me. He knew that he could not wait any longer. Even if it was dangerous, he had to rush out and kill them in close range. As for what kind of effect he could achieve, it was all up to fate. At this time, Hang He remembered the oath he made when he first joined Lung Feng. Protect the country, die without fear. Perhaps this was the time to fulfill his promise. Everyone get ready. I will count to 3. Everyone charge together. Just as Hang He was about to shout 3, a series of gunshots suddenly rang out. It was as if firecrackers were going off continuously. Hundreds of meters away, countless Navy soldiers wearing white military uniforms appeared. They were all holding Type 95 rifles, firing continuously while rushing forward. They surrounded the harbor. The sound of gunfire was endless, and under the continuous stream of people, the soldiers of the DAF Kingdom who were about to charge forward were killed from a distance. Both of them held a gun, but comparing a huotong to a flintlock gun was like comparing a fire stick to a sharp weapon. They could not be mentioned in the same breath. The sudden appearance of the 5-Star Army caught the DAF soldiers off guard and made them dizzy. Kill. The commander of the 1st Sea Division, Nha Tong, personally led the troops. Wearing the rank of a 4-star colonel, he was like a beast that had been released from its cage, constantly charging forward. The 9.5 in his hand constantly spat out tongues of flame, reaping one enemy's life after another. Beside him, the soldiers who were like white waves were also charging forward bravely. Looking at the soldiers of the Great F country, Their formation was in chaos due to the sudden attack. Countless soldiers were shot and killed. Even the arrogant Duterte was forced to lie on the ground. He didn't even dare to raise his head. If someone had said that they could suppress him to the point where he couldn't raise his head with a flintlock before this, he would definitely not believe it and would only laugh at the other party for being ignorant. But everything really happened. He finally realized that the so-called powerful firearms of the Great F country were just a joke, a self-deceiving joke. Gravel around him was constantly being hit, shattered, and flew in all directions. Occasionally it would cut through his clothes and leave wounds on his body. However, at this moment, Duterte had completely forgotten about the pain. His entire body was trembling, like a wild wolf that had always been used to being a tyrant, suddenly discovering that the person standing in front of him was a ferocious tiger. His firepower was completely suppressed. Looking from afar, there were shadows of enemies everywhere. Looking back, he was also surrounded by enemies. At that moment, Duterte knew what the result would be if he continued to fight. Duterte, who didn't want to die and was also afraid of death, didn't hesitate and directly shouted, "Don't kill me, I surrender, we surrender." It was the same for the general. It was easy to imagine that when the soldiers below heard this shout, it was as if they had heard the sound of nature. One after another they shouted to surrender. Then, without waiting for the 5-star army to reply, they threw their spears and spears all over the ground. It was as if they had given up on resisting. This was an army that only knew how to bully people. Facing the unarmed people of Palillo Island and the unarmed fishermen on the fishing boats of Song City, they wantonly displayed their killing intent. Facing the stubborn resistance of the Luzon Island garrison, they pounced on them like hungry wolves, relying on their powerful firearms to display their bloodthirsty side. But the moment they met the 5-star army, which was stronger than them, they immediately cowered. After only one wave of attacks, they immediately chose to surrender. This was how they should behave. Such an army was only fit to bully some commoners who were far inferior to them. If they were faced with a strong army, they would not even be as good as the commoners. Duterte surrendered, and the thousands of soldiers behind him also surrendered. On the port of Luzon, in front of the turrets, a large number of people knelt down. At this moment they were surrounded by the 5-star Navy. They couldn't do anything other than covering their heads with their hands. Yang Chendong, accompanied by the deputy commander of the Navy, the commander of the 1st Marine Army, Gao Xiong, and others, boarded the port. What he saw was a scene of devastation. He saw the tragic scene of countless people dying under the guns of the Great F country soldiers. The commander of the 1st Division, Nye Tong, quickly sent people to understand the results of the battle. He also saw Commander Hang He. At this moment he saluted Yang Chendong and reported the situation. When he reported the number of casualties, Yang Chendong's face became darker and darker. Reporting to the 6th young master, the above is the specific process and result of this battle. Please tell us everything, 6th young master. After Division Commander Nye finished his report, he saluted again. Then he handed over his authority and stood to the side. After a while, countless people on the port also rushed over. Some of them were lucky and escaped from the battle. Some heard the gunshots and rushed over to save their families. Looking from a distance, there were about 2,000 to 3,000 people densely packed together. Unlike before, when they saw the garrison troops, they kept a respectful distance from them. At this moment, when they looked at the wounded garrison troops, there was only admiration and admiration in their eyes. Obviously, they could use the 4 cannons built in the port to counterattack and form an overwhelming attack. But in order to protect the lives of the people, in order to not let innocent people be affected, they didn't do so. Instead, they used their own lives to fill in the gaps. They truly did the action of sacrificing their own lives to protect the people. Just based on this, they were worthy of the respect and love of the people. After silently listening to Nye Tong's report, Yang Chendong found himself a high ground and stood on it. His gaze first fell on the surrounding civilians who had rushed over. Then he looked at the hundreds of soldiers of the garrison regiment who had very excited expressions. All sorts of feelings welled up in his heart, and an unspeakable thought rapidly formed in his mind. Mencius said, "The people are the most important, the country comes second, and the ruler is the least important." For so many years this was often just a slogan. How many people actually did it? But today the Port Luzon garrison soldiers did it. Our 5-star army soldiers did it. Just now they would rather face the terrifying gunfire of the enemy, face the danger of sacrificing their precious lives at any time, and would rather use their flesh and blood to resist the enemy than hurt a single person. What kind of spirit is this? This is a spirit where blood is thicker than water. Yang Qindong's voice became louder and louder. This is enough to prove that they treat the people as their own family, as their parents, relatives, and best friends. Only in this way would he be willing to sacrifice his own life rather than harm others. Just based on this, they are the most adorable people of this generation. Everyone, am I right? The most adorable people, the most adorable people. At that moment, the thousands of people who were at the forefront shouted like a tide, their momentum soaring to the sky. And such shouts and Yang Qindong's speech also moved Hang He and the others, making them and the people couldn't help but tear up. He gestured for them to stop and the shouts stopped abruptly. Even the thousands of commoners were now like an organized army, obeying orders and listening to commands. They did very well. Everyone's performance was also very good. Because of this king will now make 3 decisions. First, bury and compensate all the soldiers and people who died in this battle. They were all innocent people who died to fulfill their duty. They were invaded and died for no reason. We must remember them and treat their relatives who are still alive well. We must let the dead close their eyes in peace, and the living can also go into battle with light burdens so that they can live a more exciting life. Long live the Southern Martial King, long live the Southern Martial King. What responded to Yang Qindong were the shouts of thousands of people and countless soldiers. Clearly, these words were what they were thinking. After making a stop gesture again, Yang Qindong continued, "Second, from today onwards the garrison regiment will be officially promoted to the Song City Garrison Division. The division commander will be Hang He and there will be 5 regiments under his command, each with 5 battalions, a total of 10,000 people. At the same time he will be equipped with 5 third-grade warships and 1 fourth-grade warship. Under his command he will protect the peace of this region. Long live the Southern Martial King, long live the Southern Martial King." Third, from Luzon Island to Sumatra Island in the southwest, it has always been the Great Ming's territory. The existence of the Great Ming's old port is proof. Now the Great Ming country is wantonly invading our territory, taking our benefits, killing our people and stealing our territory. Their actions have angered both men and gods. Henceforth this king announces that we have lost control. Anyone who dares to resist in this region will be killed. Anyone who betrays the country will be killed. Anyone who doesn't back down will be killed. Chapter 10:10. After roaring out the word kill, Yang Qindong's gaze turned to Duterte and the others. His murderous aura grew heavier as he said, "These invaders, they didn't care about killing civilians, they should be beheaded according to their crimes. Next, this king will make a judgment. All the invaders will be sentenced to death, in order to appease the sacrifice of the garrison soldiers and the innocent people of Luzon Port. Now High 1st Division, please carry it out. Long live the Southern Martial King, long live the Southern Martial King." Once again the sea of people shouted in unison, representing everyone's thoughts. Duterte and the others who understood the meaning of Yang Qindong's words instantly turned pale. This general was still trying to explain something. "You can't kill us, we have already surrendered, we are captives. And I also know many secrets of DAF country, I can provide you with help." Captives, if the ones who lost were the garrison soldiers and the ones who lost were the people of the port, can you not kill a single one? As for the secrets you speak of, do you think in front of my powerful navy, there is anything that can resist our vanguard? After Yang Qindong asked 2 questions in a row, his voice was cold as he said, "There is no need to reason with animals, execute them." All the commoners and garrison soldiers could only watch as over 1,000 people were killed. Blood flowed like a river in the harbor. But for some reason no one was afraid, on the contrary everyone was very excited and many of the civilians were grateful for what the garrison had done for them. They also wanted to do something. They all expressed their desire to join the 5-star Navy. They wanted to use their own hands to avenge their loved ones and friends. Towards the enthusiasm of the civilians, the division commander Nyatong naturally politely declined. In order to become a qualified member of the Cold Vanguard, one couldn't just rely on a moment of bravery. One had to go through extremely difficult tests and background checks. This was not something that could be done by ordinary citizens. There were also many non-human citizens who could join the cold vanguard. And in order to not dampen the morale of the civilians, Nye Tong said according to what Yang Chendong had taught him, "Folks, you have not undergone specific and systematic training, you are temporarily unable to become a qualified Navy soldier. But as long as you are willing to work hard, there will definitely be opportunities in the future. Now if you really have the heart you can do some other work. It is also a contribution." "General, what can we do?" the commoners asked in unison. "There are many things that can be said. For example, you can help the army transport supplies, spread the news of what happened here, and let all the people on the island know that the 5-star army is fighting for the people. You can persuade more people to help our army. When we defeat the Great F country's army and reclaim the island, you can immediately rush to the island to maintain the law and order there, guard the property there, prevent the return of invaders and prevent people from causing trouble in our rear. You can do all of this and you can even do it. Furthermore, the Southern Marshal King will not let you do all this for free. He will give you a certain amount of reward to express his gratitude. At the same time it will also strengthen your feelings as the masters." Nye Tong did not know if this would be useful. In his eyes these people were just civilians. Since they were civilians, what they needed to do was to live their own lives and try not to cause trouble. How many people would do something like helping in a war? Nye Tong's idea was not unreasonable. Since ancient times, when faced with war, most people chose to retreat and escape. The people who truly had the courage to face it or even rush to participate were few and far between. But Yang Chendong did not think this way. Once, when he attacked the Phnom Penh dynasty, which was the current Cambodia province, he had borrowed the power of the civilians. When he led the army to fight in the front line, it was the Phnom Penh civilians who constantly followed behind, helping them bury the bodies, transport supplies, and finally in a month's time they defeated a large dynasty. After that experience, Yang Chendong liked this method. Next, Yang Chendong wanted to conquer the entire Daf country. There were many islands, and if he had to fight and defend one place at a time, he would need to constantly divide his troops. In the end, there was a high possibility that he would not have enough troops. But if he had the help of the civilians, then it would be different. Not only could he save his troops, but he could also borrow the persuasion of the civilians. It was a method of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Commander Nye Tong's words fell into the ears of the civilians. Not long after, it also spread to the ears of many other civilians. When the garrison regiment faced the invasion of the enemy, they would rather use their bodies to block the bullets than use their cannons to harm a single civilian. This moved many people, making them believe that the 5-star army was the army that saved the world. Naturally, the Intelligence Bureau and the Han people who moved here added fuel to the fire in the dark. But at the same time, helping the 5-star army would give them benefits and rewards. This kind of benefit, in addition to the fact that Port Luzon did exist, made it hard for them to reject. In the following battle, these commoners indeed played an extremely important role in assisting the army. Duterte and more than 1,000 soldiers of the Dafe country were killed at the port. They avenged the dead soldiers of the garrison regiment and the people of the port, and also played the role of a flag sacrifice. Next, Yang Chendong personally led the 1st Sea Division from the north and went straight to the Ditsao Island of the Dafe country. Just as the 1st High Division received the telegram and headed towards Port Luzon, the 2nd High Division and the 3rd High Division also headed towards their respective targets. The 2nd High Division's commander Zhao Chongwang headed towards the west, while the 3rd High Division's commander Long Yun Tian headed towards the east. Mindoro Island was the first island and target to be conquered on the west. On this island, there were about 5,000 soldiers of the Daf country and 60,000 civilians. The largest city on the island, Mayu City, had the largest Mayu port on the island. When the 5-star army's flag appeared in the distance, and hundreds of warships appeared, the soldiers of the Daf country were dumbfounded. When the 3rd-level warships and 2nd-level warships appeared, and under the command of the division commander, Zhao Chongwang, the entire port was soon plunged into a sea of fire. The ships, soldiers, and defensive buildings left here were destroyed in a very short period of time. Before most of the civilians in the city could figure out what was going on, the 2 ND Division's main force had already begun to disembark at the port. With the support of artillery fire, they entered Mayu City after an hour, killed all the enemies who resisted, and occupied almost all the military facilities and warehouses here. From the firing to the end, less than 2 hours had passed. More than 1,000 soldiers of the Daoist country were killed and injured, and the rest were all captured. Under the cover of artillery fire, the entire Mindoro Island did not even have a single ship escape. Such a victory was incredible in the eyes of others, but in the eyes of the 5-star Navy, it was so common. If there must be a word to describe it, it was like using a cannon to kill a mosquito. Compared to the well-trained and extremely advanced firearms of the 5-star Navy, dealing with the unprepared soldiers of the Daoist country, from the beginning to the end, was completely crushing. There was no pride or complacency at all. After occupying this place, the first thing the 2nd Division commander Zhao Chongwang did was not to count the war gains, but to say to the dispatcher next to him, "Immediately report to the 6th Young Master and the Navy headquarters that the war on Mindoro Island is over. Please send someone to take over." In addition, the 2nd Division intends to continue south with the main force. Please give instructions. A small island like Mindoro was naturally unable to satisfy the appetite of Division High and Division High, so it was expected that they would continue to fight. Not only did Division High and Division High act this way, Division 3 Long Yuntian's subordinates also quickly reported to Yang Chendong and the Navy headquarters to continue to fight. Long Yuntian was favored by Yang Chendong and finally became the head of the 3rd Division as he wished. He would do his best to prove that the 6th Young Master did not misjudge him. In his eyes, this battle was the time to perform well, so after receiving the order he led the 3rd Division commander high straight to Katanduane's island. Due to the distance, the time taken to launch the attack was not as fast as the 2nd Division. However, from the moment they entered the island to the moment they fired the cannons, it only took them 2 hours. This was not because the combat power of the 3rd Division was stronger than that of the 2nd Division. Instead, it was because Katanduane's island was too weak, so the speed of their attack was much faster. Yang Chendong, together with the main force of the 1st Division and the Navy headquarters, soon after leaving the port of Luzon Island, they received reports from the 2nd Division and the 3rd Division. The speed of the military progress was smoother than expected. After Yang Chendong read the report, he just casually handed it to the deputy commander of the Navy Zhou Xian and said, "With such strength they dare to go against the 5-star army, there is no need for this Daoist country to exist." It was said that the more daring a person was, the more bountiful the land would be. In Yang Chendong's eyes, Daoist country was not in his eyes. If it was not for the fact that he was not fully prepared, and that the resources in the islands were not that abundant and scattered, this place would not have become his early target. If there was someone to blame, it was the merchant Abu Burkle, who was blinded by profit and did something that led to his own death. Since it was like this, Yang Chendong would fulfill his wish. Zhou Xian took the telegram and quickly read it. He asked, "6th Young Master, do we agree to their request?" "Yes, but we have to ask them to play it safe and not be reckless. Our intelligence department has sent news that this Western merchant is quite capable. He has also spent some effort to build a naval fleet. Any carelessness could lead to irreparable consequences. Also, inform the logistics department that the transport ships can be activated and quickly occupy the occupied islands." Yang Chendong gave the latest order. Chapter 10-11. Each team took turns to advance according to their different tasks. The war unfolded in an orderly manner, and the islands belonging to the Daoist country were occupied one by one. Due to the slave system implemented by the Great F country, after occupying an island, the indigenous people became the people with the lowest status. When the Great F country soldiers entered the island, they burned and plundered and did all sorts of evil. This had already aroused the anger of the people. When the 5-star Navy arrived, these people fought to rebel and cooperated with the army's entry, making the progress much smoother. Most of the soldiers of the Daoist country were bought by Abu Burkle with money, and most of them were pirates who had been at sea all year round. These people were naturally unmatched when it came to looting, but these people had one thing in common, which was that they didn't know how to write the word loyalty. In their eyes there were only benefits. If there were benefits, they would naturally join. If there were no benefits, they would run as far as they could. With such a temperament, when the news of the 5-star Navy's attack came, many of the Daoist country's soldiers, former pirate groups, on the islands fled. In some small islands they didn't even do anything to resist. When the main force of the 5-star Navy arrived, They often encountered an island that was unprepared. What they saw were the indigenous people who didn't resist at all. With such a big change in the situation, the second and third naval commanders reported the situation again. Yang Qindong quickly responded. Since the local people were also exploited, as long as they sincerely submitted to Xianxia and Song City, they wouldn't be harmed. But if anyone showed any hostility to the 5-star Navy, they would be killed without mercy. Those who are not of my race must have different intentions. After so many years of development in the original Sulu archipelago, only the people in the Luzon area were mostly Han people. They still had feelings for the great Ming dynasty. The people in the other archipelago moved here later. They had their own beliefs and many of them were influenced by Islam. For such a hidden enemy, Yang Qindong would never be lenient, because he knew that today's kindness may be exchanged for understanding sorrow. At the same time, Yang Qindong also issued another order. For the pirates that previously belonged to the Daf kingdom, kill them if possible. If they couldn't kill them, they had to be driven out of the sea. In short, any forces or individuals who dared to be enemies with Xianxia must not be allowed to survive. The 5-star Marine warriors, who have always been warlike and composed of elites, are waiting to make contributions and obtain unparalleled glory. In order to achieve this goal, the worst thing was to have no battles to fight. This order coincided with the thoughts in his heart. Naturally, he would not be polite. The warship continued to accelerate. Once it bumped into the Defay Navy or the foreign pirates, it would not be polite. It would shoot out cannonballs. It did not know how many ships were damaged. The color of the sea became a lot redder because of this. The continuous victories of the First Ocean Army naturally caused some people to jump and curse. In Marilag city of Emil Island, the temporary capital of Daf country, King Abu Burkle was sitting on a throne as he pointed at the officials below and scolded. What the hell is going on? Didn't you say that our army is composed of elite pirates who have experienced naval battles all year round? Didn't they boast to this king that if the 5-star army dares to come, they will definitely destroy them at sea? Why is it that when the real battle starts they are so weak? Who can give this king an explanation? As Abu Burkle spoke, his gaze landed on Ferdinand, who stood at the top of the vassals. Ferdinand, who was deeply trusted by King Abu Burkle, was given the position of prime minister. The main job he was responsible for was to deal with the pirates and was in charge of the military. In his bones, Abu Burkle was still a businessman. He valued profit more. Originally, with the help of his family that had been doing business for generations, he had some foundation. Doing business in this archipelago was like a fish in water. He seemed to have a pair of innate wisdom, always able to do things with appropriate things very well. To put it bluntly, he could transport the most common goods from one place to another in a very short period of time and sell them at a high price. Then when he returned, he would bring back the specialties of the other place and sell them at a high price along the way. It was because of this unique talent that Abu Burkle's business grew bigger and bigger, and the money in his hands grew bigger and bigger. When he had enough money to build a huge army, he met Ferdinand and the two of them hit it off immediately. Especially when Ferdinand said that he could build a country with financial resources and then use the power of the nation to collect money. Abu Burkle saw a bright path and thus, Daf country was born. Who knew that the good times didn't last long? When they just occupied the nearby islands, some of the looted items were still being counted. Before they could be transported out, the 5-star army came and gave them a heavy blow. News of islands and cities being looted came one after another. After spending a lot of money and bribing so many pirates to work for him, this was the result. Abu Burkle, who spent the money, was naturally very distressed. At this moment, his gaze toward Ferdinand was naturally full of hostility. Prime Minister Ferdinand, who was stared at like this, felt very wronged. He was only ordered to contact those pirates. In the end, one paid and the other contributed. It was a cooperative relationship. How could he have the ability to control these pirates? Now that they were facing a more powerful 5-star army, they cowered. What did this have to do with him? But when he thought about how Abu Burkle was a vengeful person, if he didn't react, he might be the next unlucky one. Left with no choice, he could only step forward and say, "Your Majesty, the 5-star army came prepared, but our army was completely unprepared. Unprepared against unprepared, plus the other party originally planned well. With superior military strength against our inferior military strength, how could we not lose? But as long as we can gather our army and form a similar scale, the situation will definitely be reversed. These pirates are the forces of other sea regions that have been unhindered for many years. They naturally have their own reasons for being able to dominate a region. Prime Minister, are you saying that the 5-star army can be defeated? Abu Burkle asked with interest. Yes, Your Majesty. I just said that before we weren't prepared, so they took advantage of the loophole and used superior military strength to fight against a small army. But as long as we can gather our army and meet force with force, our chances of winning are still very high. Ferdinand said with a face full of confidence. Good, since that's the case, I order you to contact them now. Gather them and deal a heavy blow to the 5-star army. Can you do it? Abu Burkle saw that there was a new hope, and his face immediately smiled a little more. Yes. But I have a request. If you want these pirates to work for you, you need to give them enough rewards, so... Abu Burkle frowned slightly. Before, in order to invite these pirates to join the Great F country, he spent a lot of money. But at this point, if he didn't continue to pay, these pirates would definitely not listen to him. And once the 5-star army really came, he was afraid that at that time, they wouldn't even have the most basic way to survive. He would also have to leave because of this, and that would be the same as cutting off his path to wealth. A little impatience spoils great plans. Although he wasn't happy, he still clenched his teeth and said, "All right, this king will agree to your conditions. But this time there can't be any problems. Your Majesty is wise. Your Majesty, please rest assured. Just wait for the good news of my victory." Ferdinand let out a big sigh of relief. He was the one who contacted these pirates, so he naturally knew their temperament very well. They were a group of people who would sell their souls for money. As long as they were given enough money, they would even kill their own family without blinking an eye. It was just dealing with the 5-star army. What was so difficult about it? Ferdinand took the large amount of gold and silver given by Abu Burkle and left the capital. The first place he took the fleet to was Palawan Island in the west of the archipelago. Palawan Island was the westernmost island in the Great F country. It wasn't difficult to get there because it was far away from other islands. Once it was attacked, it could retreat or advance. It also had another advantage. There was a very powerful pirate group here, Ma Keqing's pirate group. Ma Keqing was originally a pirate giant that sailed around Sumatra. He had close to 1,000 large boats and a crew of more than 60,000 people. Among them, there were 20,000 elites who were good at fighting and desperados. It was a very powerful pirate force. When Ferdinand went to rope him in, he spent a lot of effort. Of course, he also spent a lot of money to invite him to join the Great F country and let him help guard Palawan Island and become the main force supporting the Great F country's western seas. It was precisely because of his understanding of Ma Keqing's abilities that Ferdinand had been the first to seek him out. When he landed on the island and brought with him 10 chests full of gold and silver, totaling up to 500,000 taels of silver, the pirate leader Ma Keqing's face was already beaming like a flower. "Brother Ma, this is our king's sincerity. He also said that as long as you can defeat the 5-star army, he will also give you a third of the loot. How about it?" Seeing that the time was right, Ferdinand said his request. It was only a third of the loot, so it was naturally difficult to move Ma Keqing. This also made him quickly withdraw his smile and said with a very serious expression, "Prime Minister, what do you think we are? A mere 500,000 taels of silver is enough to make tens of thousands of my brothers work for you?" Chapter 10-12. Hehe, Brother Ma is lacking. You probably don't know how powerful the 5-star army's ships are. Let me tell you, they have the fastest power in the world. At the same time, each ship is equipped with cannons that are several times more advanced than ours. Once we defeat them and occupy their ships, it will greatly increase Brother Ma's strength. Moreover, the king said 1/3, but he isn't here. How much 1/3 is there? Isn't it up to the two of us to decide? Hearing that the spoils of war were so generous, Ma Keqing was already tempted. When he heard Ferdinand's words, he smiled again. Then everything will depend on the Prime Minister? No, all victory will depend on Brother Ma. This time the enemy isn't weak. Don't hold back. A smile appeared on Ferdinand's face as well, followed by bursts of laughter. The two of them had reached an agreement just like that. There were no eternal friends, no eternal enemies, only eternal benefits. When the benefits were big enough, people would take risks. Ma Keqing made the decision to fight with the five-star army. In order to tilt the scales of victory towards here, Ferdinand used his identity as the Prime Minister of the F country to give orders to the nearby sea regions. Once the battle started, they were required to do everything possible to stop the nearby five-star army's reinforcements. They had to buy enough time for them to destroy the enemy's main force. Regarding this, Ma Keqing didn't put it in his eyes. He said bluntly, "We have already investigated. The five-star army's navy is divided into 3 parts. Each part has less than 10,000 people and less than 200 ships. As long as they are surrounded by us, they won't be able to escape, let alone send a message." What Ma Keqing meant was that Ferdinand's actions were superfluous. Ferdinand laughed and said, "I don't think Brother Ma's goal is so short-sighted. I arranged a few people to watch over the other five-star army's main force. If we can destroy more enemy ships, wouldn't we gain more benefits?" "Ah, that's feasible." Ma Keqing laughed heartily, as if the main force of the five-star naval division was already present and could be easily manipulated by him. This was not his fault. He could only blame himself for the fact that the five-star naval division was only active in the area around Little Ryukyu Island. They were only passing by Simantala. Considering their limited military strength, they had not established any influence there. Those who didn't know didn't care. Ma Keqing didn't know the strength of the five-star army's navy, which was why he made such a decision. But reality soon, not all ships' navy's navy. Some power was like a sharp blade's edge. It was impossible to block off its light fleets' light. Set Ma Keqing's navy's S's. Among them, Ma Keqing led the main force and appeared here. He was ready to fight a decisive battle with the five-star army. However, he had already set up hundreds of warships and tens of thousands of bandit soldiers in the surroundings, ready to surround them. Using oneself as bait to lure the enemy over and surround them had been done many times. Ma Keqing's face was naturally filled with confidence. After arranging everything, he ordered the scout ship to leave and find the main force of the five-star army to lead it over. The five-star army's main force was Hai's 2nd Division. Division Commander Zhao Chongwang first raided Mindoro Island and occupied it without much effort. After that, all they had to do was wait. 3 days later, the logistics forces arrived, bringing with them countless Luzon residents and a battalion of garrison soldiers. After taking over the coastal defense of this place, the 2nd Division continued south, taking over 6 or 7 islands of various sizes, including Busanga Island. The result was the same. Because these islands were too small, it was impossible for any army to be stationed there. When Hai's 2nd Division arrived, these so-called Dafei's army either fled at the sight of them or chose to surrender after being surrounded. There was not even a decent battle. This made Division Commander Zhao Chongwang and the officials of Hai's 2nd Division very unhappy. A group of true elites had their own dignity. If the enemy couldn't even withstand a single blow, then there would be no challenge at all. For them, this kind of expedition would become a boring thing. Until the scout ship sent by Ma Keqing suddenly appeared, Zhao Chongwang, who had been dozing off, opened his eyes wide again. "Division Commander, look at that flag. It's the scout ship of Ma Keqing's pirate group. Should we defeat them and feed them to the fish in the sea?" 1st Division Commander Xianxia stood in the captain's room and asked excitedly. "No." Zhao Chongwang hurriedly made a hand gesture and said with a look of anticipation, "I've heard that Ma Keqing's strength is not bad. It's not easy to see their scout ship. Of course, we have to follow them and find their main force for a decisive battle. Like this, pass down the order. All warships are not to fire. Just follow these scout ships. We have to find the enemy's nest and destroy them in one fell swoop." With the division commander's order, the entire 2ND Division's 200 warships quickly moved. They adjusted their direction and followed behind the scout ships towards the west. Originally, Zhao Chongwang was worried that the other party was a fast scout ship. If he did not follow them closely, he would lose them. However, when Zhao Chongwang found that the other party was not going all out and seemed to be waiting for him, he suddenly had a bad feeling. At the same time, 1st Division Commander Xianxia also felt that something was wrong. He said with concern in his heart, "Division Commander, the speed of the scout ship shouldn't be this slow. Do you think they are deliberately leading us there?" Originally he had some doubts in his heart. Now that his subordinate also had the same thought, Zhao Chongwang was almost certain of the other party's plan. He nodded and said, "What you said is exactly what I was thinking. It seems that the other party is prepared for a decisive battle with us." That's exactly what I was thinking. Tell the fleet to slow down and keep a sufficient distance between each ship. Be prepared to fight at any time. At the same time, report everything that happened here to the headquarters. When it came to such a big battle, Zhao Chongwang had to report it. This was originally the rule of Xianxia's army. When this telegram was sent to the headquarters, Yang Chendong and the 1st Division had just occupied Panay Island. They were checking their harvest here. The telegram was sent to Yang Chendong and the Deputy Commander of the Navy and the 1st Division Commander Gao Xiong. "Come on, find out the relevant information about Ma Keqing," Yang Chendong said casually. Beta Persei and a few others quickly sent a thick stack of information to Yang Chendong. This information was provided by the Security Bureau and the CIA. Then the CIA continued to develop, and they already had a certain intelligence system. With 2 departments collecting and providing information at the same time, this would enhance the authenticity of the information and provide a better reference for making correct judgments. Oh, this pirate organization is quite powerful. Looking at the information sent by the 2 intelligence departments at the same time, which was roughly the same. Looking at the numbers above, there were thousands of warships and more than 60,000 soldiers. Yang Chendong couldn't help but be shocked. One must know that the pirate forces were not comparable to other forces. Surviving at sea all year round made their needs greater than on land. Let's put it this way. If a force had 60,000 people on land, it wouldn't be surprising. If it was done well, even a county magistrate could do it. But to have such a huge force at sea, the resources needed were too much. It was enough to show that this was not a small force. Gao Xiong also saw this group of forces, then said worriedly, "Sixth young master, enough ants can bite an elephant to death. In the face of such a strong enemy, I'm afraid that even if C2nd Division wins, they will have to pay a certain price. It's better to send reinforcements immediately." "Reinforcements are needed." Yang Chendong nodded in agreement. Although he was confident in C2nd Division with the power of their warships and cannons, as long as they were not ambushed in their sleep, they would have the ability to break out of the encirclement. But just passively taking a beating was not his style. The establishment of each C division used a lot of financial and material resources in Reiken City. Any loss would make him feel distressed. How about this? Send a telegram to the C4th Division patrolling the nearby sea area. Let them quickly approach C2nd Division. Don't let them meet up first. Once they find that the enemy is surrounding them, attack them from both inside and outside. 1 C2nd Division and 1 C4th Division. With such a force, even if they were facing a force several times stronger than them, they would still have the ability to counterattack. Yang Chendong gave the order and Gao Xiong nodded in agreement. Then he asked, "The enemy has already made their move. 6th young master, I think we should also hurry up. Everything on Panay Island will be left to the garrison and the people. Should we continue to move forward?" "Yes." Yang Chendong nodded silently, and his eyes fell on Emerald Island on the sand table. This time, Daf country went to war without declaring war, killing and injuring so many soldiers and people. If they did not teach them a lesson, wouldn't they be looked down upon by others? Wouldn't anyone dare to provoke them in the future? C1st Division set sail again and the fleet headed south. Thousands of nautical miles away in the west at this moment, ships were also densely packed. The tense atmosphere before the war appeared on every pirate's head, indicating that a life-and-death battle seemed to be about to begin at any time. Compared to the tension of the soldiers below, Ma Keqing as the leader was very relaxed. In his opinion, with more than 6 times the number of troops and 5 times the number of warships, the 5-star army had already become his meal, the meat in the bowl. At this time he consciously ignored 2 problems. Chapter 10-13. First, the strength of the 5-star Navy. Second, the 5-star Navy has an external communication system that he can't understand at all. He thought that after encircling the 5-star army, the other side will become a lone army. He thought that with the advantage of warships and numbers, the other side will not be his opponent. But he didn't know that at this time, the 2nd C Division has already contacted the 4th C Division regarding the decision of the 6th Young Master and the Navy headquarters to send the 4th C Division to join forces with them. Although Zhao Chongwang has some resistance, he thinks that the 2nd C Division can win. But considering that the number of warships is not equal, once the other side is defeated, they will likely escape. When he can't chase after them, he still agreed with this decision. It's just that Zhao Chongwang thought of the 4th C Division as a peripheral force. He didn't think of cooperating with them. He wanted to let the 2nd C Division have their own military achievements. And all of this changed because he entered the encirclement. After discovering that the enemy's scout ship was deliberately luring them into the encirclement, Zhao Chongwang ordered all the warships to slow down their marching speed and maintain a good alignment. In the end, 3 days later, the 2nd Division, which was tailing the scout ship, finally found the densely packed enemy ships waiting for them on the opposite side of the sea. Looking from afar, there are no less than 400 warships. This powerful lineup fell into Zhao Chongwang's eyes, but he didn't have any fear. Instead, he was very excited. Finally, there is a piece of fat meat in front of him he can eat to his heart's content. But what happened next changed Zhao Chongwang's plan of eating alone. After the 2nd C Division entered the ambush, a large number of enemy ships appeared in his north, east, and south. No matter which direction he looked at, there were about 200 enemy ships. This is 5 times his own strength. In the face of such a situation, Zhao Chongwang first had a fierce struggle in his heart, then he quickly made a decision. He called the telegraph operator and said, "Report the situation in front of us to the 6th Young Master and the Navy headquarters. At the same time, inform the 4th Division of the Sea that all the enemies have appeared. They can move now." Division Commander Xianxia, who was accompanying the 1st C Division, shouted, "Our 2nd C Division can eat these enemies. Why are we still asking the 4th C Division for help?" The hidden meaning in Xianxia's words was, why did they have to give half of the credit to others? Regarding this question, Zhao Chongwang's answer was, "The fat meat is too big for us, 2nd Division High, to eat it. If we ask 4th Division High for help, not only will we not eat less, we will eat more. At the same time, we can reduce our losses, so why not?" As the division commander, Zhao Chongwang had absolute authority over the military affairs of the 2nd Division. Immediately, he had the telegraph operator issue the order. What he didn't expect was that not only did he receive news that the 4th Master Teacher had agreed to make a move, he even received praise from the 6th Young Master. The general gist of the telegram was that Zhao Chongwang had always looked at the big picture and had truly integrated sincerity and unity into actual combat. Very good. The 6th Young Master was very happy and personally rewarded Commander Zhao with a box of Bugnam of Gojosian cigarettes and 100 jars of good wine. Considering the quantity of cigarettes produced, cigarettes became one of the most sought-after goods. Because of the high consumption, even the generals in the army received a monthly quota. As for the Wunan Ace brand that had just been released, it was the best among them. It was not inferior to the influence of the current Zhonghua cigarettes. A box of cigarettes and 100 jars of good wine were given out at once. This kind of reward was sent to the entire Xianxia army through the telegram. Remember, it was the entire Xianxia army. It wasn't limited to the 1st Division High, nor was it limited to the entire navy of the 2nd Division High. As long as one was in the Xianxia army, they were notified of this news. For a moment, while everyone was envious of these benefits, they were even more envious of 2nd Division Commander Zhao Chongwang. To be able to receive such a reward from the 6th Young Master, needless to say, he had already been taken seriously. Could be imagined that in the future he would have a meteoric rise. Why did Yang Chendong do this? It was very simple to say. He used this proof to tell all the senior officers how important it was to be united. As long as you have the big picture in mind, even if you didn't achieve much, you would get more points than if you acted alone. Zhao Chongwang was shocked by this telegram, but soon he was very excited. But when the excitement passed, he began to ponder the meaning of this matter. So, after he thought it through, 2nd Division High didn't immediately counterattack. Instead, they continued to drill into the middle of the encirclement. Since he already knew that he was surrounded, it was equivalent to knowing the opponent's plan. Zhao Chongwang wasn't in a hurry. He wanted to wait and see, not to see if the opponent had any tricks up their sleeves, but to buy time for 3rd Division High to reach the designated target. 2nd Division High was surrounded, but they didn't immediately escape. Instead, they continued to move forward towards the center of the battlefield. This also made Ma Keqing, who was about to give the order to attack, hesitate. This also made Prime Minister Ferdinand, who was following the army, unable to understand. Shouldn't a normal person run away immediately when encountering such a situation? If they didn't enter the center of the encirclement, even if they had to pay a big price to escape, there was still hope for them to break through. But once they entered the center of the battlefield, even if they wanted to escape with a ship, it would be harder than ascending to the heavens. The five-star army knew this, but why were they still so close to the center of the battlefield? Puzzled, the two gathered together to think about it. Because if they didn't understand this problem, they would never be at ease. Very quickly, the two of them came to a consensus. The reason Teacher Hai's 2nd Regiment did this must be due to their arrogance. In other words, the five-star army was very arrogant. They probably didn't think highly of these pirates, so they dared to take the risk. It was no wonder that the two of them thought this way. According to the information obtained from the scout ship that followed 2nd Division Hai, ever since they discovered each other, 2nd Division Hai's ships didn't leave. Then, after 3 days of pursuit, 2nd Division Hai's ships had already entered the encirclement. Faced with this extremely accurate information, it could only mean one thing. 2nd Division Hai didn't have any reinforcements, and they didn't have any reinforcements. If this wasn't arrogance, then what was it? Haha, everyone says that the five-star army is very strong, but I haven't seen it yet. Now I see their arrogant side. Very good, since they don't put others in their eyes, then don't blame me for being merciless. Use the flag to tell the other ships not to be in a hurry to attack and let the enemy move. At the same time, shrink the encirclement and wait for the enemy to appear in the center of the battlefield before attacking together. Ma Keqing was furious. He was angered by the arrogance of 2nd Division Hai. In the past, whenever an enemy was surrounded by him, which one of them didn't panic? They would flee in a hurry, and it would be difficult for them to even display 50% of their usual strength. However, 2nd Division Hai actually did the opposite, and didn't put his encirclement in their eyes. Since it was like this, why would he be polite? He would just give them a good beating. After the order was given, 2nd Division Hai unhurriedly moved towards the center of the battlefield under the encirclement of thousands of ships. During this period, their speed was very slow, but they kept moving forward, so the pirates didn't have any other ideas. In any case, it was impossible for them to go out and report. Since that was the case, why should they worry about them escaping? Thus, the next half of the day passed in this kind of dawdling. 20 hours later, the 4th Division Hai sent a message that they had arrived at the designated location. They could enter the battlefield at any time after 2nd Division Hai fired their first shot. The 2nd Division Hai's commander, Zhao Changwang, ordered the entire division to prepare for battle. In these 20 hours, other than the necessary personnel on duty, the rest of the 2nd Division Cold Front officers and soldiers were resting and sleeping in their cabins. But all the veterans knew that the more the battle, the more it was important to maintain enough physical strength. Only in this way could they perform better on the battlefield. After 20 hours of rest, the officers and soldiers were full of spirit and energy. The moment the division headquarters gave the order, the 4 regiments immediately separated, with the division headquarters as the center, guarding the east, south, west, and north, guarding the 4 directions. This was called the 4 directions defensive formation, and it was often practiced during exercises. But this was the first time it was used, and it was also the first time in the history of the 5-star Navy that a division was surrounded. The 4 directions defensive formation was completed in less than half an hour. When the pirates more than 10 miles away discovered their abnormality and began to approach them, the 4 regiments were ready to attack. As the 2nd Marine Division, which was composed entirely of cold front soldiers, other than the transport ships, all the ships were equipped with 100mm mortars. The advantage of this cannon was that it was small, easy to carry, and easy to move. It could be placed at the bow, middle, or stern of the ship, and could be adjusted according to the direction of the enemy. Moreover, the shortest attack range was 13 miles, and it could be used to kill enemies from a long distance. As for the divisions, they were equipped with 5 level 4 warships. Among them, there was one for the division headquarters and one for each of the 4 regiments. All of the Class 4 warships were equipped with Type 61 100mm single-barreled naval cannons. Firing rate, 12 rounds/minute, range 22. 5 kilometers against the sea, 14 kilometers against the air. Elevation, 85 degrees. Weight, 15.9 kilograms. Muzzle velocity, 895 meters per second. This type of 100 mm naval cannon was produced after Yang Chendong took out the finished product from the warehouse, and the Crimson City shipyard gathered countless manpower and resources to research it for 3 years before they succeeded. This type of naval cannon could fire up to 45 nautical miles away, and was currently the strongest cannon developed by the Crimson City shipyard and munitions factory. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.